answer. Was Sachin doing better than me?
Well, I'm saying that. I mean, you should say yes.
You should say yes, yeah. So I've got good news for you. He's back tomorrow. I've got bad news for you. It's me all day today. Okay? So what we're going to do today, so has anybody in here studied any sort of entrepreneurial finance at all? Anybody? Oh, really? Excellent. Excellent. And then I have a chance to try to get you to my way of thinking right from the beginning. Because normally, from my experience, people who have learned entrepreneurial finance, they think the goal is to get these fancy buzzwords like burn rate and stuff like that, okay? And we'll learn some of those terms on the last day. But for me, what is far more important, and this comes out in every program that I ever do, is mindset. It's about thinking, okay? And so we're going to watch some videos today which really capture the beginning of venture capital. These are video clips from a documentary called Nothing Ventured. Okay, it's a documentary made in the US. You will get these clips, and I think by the time you get them, somebody was asking me for my slides yesterday, and let me assure you, you will get all the slides, but not only that, you will get a full curriculum. You'll get a syllabus, you'll get all the slides, you'll get all the videos translated in subtitles in Thai. So you get a whole package. Not on Thursday, you'll get it I think you get it a month from now. We put a whole package together and send it to you, okay? But hopefully we'll get a whole curriculum that you can use any way you see fit, including these videos, all right? Now what's important about these videos for me is they capture how venture capital started. Has anyone heard the term venture capital? Venture capital, it's kind of a fancier buzzword these days, so we're going to talk a little bit about venture capital. Many times when people think of entrepreneurial finance, they think of venture capital. Specifically venture capital that came from the Silicon Valley area. So I want to start today by looking a little bit at the history of venture capital, okay, through a series of clips. And we're going to go, the way we're going to do this, the clips are different lengths, but they're 4 minutes to 6 minutes in length, if I remember. So what I want us to do is watch the clips, and then I'm going to put up 3 or 4 questions for each clip, which I want you guys to discuss at your tables. Make sure you kind of get the message and have a discussion, and then we'll have a slightly longer discussion in the room about what is going on in the clip. Okay? This is the very important thing. What is going on in the clip? All right? And through a series of these clips, the very first clip I play is going back quite a long time, at the very end of the 1950s or early 1960s, so you may not know that company, unless you're a little bit closer to my age, all right? But by the time we get through the 7th or 8th clip, for sure you will start to know the companies, because there will be companies that started coming out in the 90s, all right? Companies like Apple, there's a story of Apple in here, okay? So we're gonna go through those, watch one clip at a time, have a short discussion on our table, and then have a discussion in the room. And always be aware of 2 things. Be aware of the materials we're studying, and then also try to be aware of the technique we're using today, and whether you think this is a technique, a teaching technique that can work for you, okay? But again, I'm not laying out any theory or slides at the beginning, right? Like I said to you, I like to start out with a story, a case, a problem, something to get people thinking, and then I'll put the slides in at the end of the lesson to kind of provide a framework or some theory or something like that, okay? I use this technique all the time. I urge you to try it sometime, okay? It can be a little scary when we're used to being the person who presents slides, But if you try it and you practice a little bit, you might find that it's satisfying both for yourself and for the people that you're teaching. Okay? By the way, this guy's name is Motu. Do you know Motu? Master of the universe. Okay? Because right now he's in charge of a parallel universe over at UTCC. We have something like 500 students running through an entrepreneurial exercise, all of them exploring around Huiquan, and he has them in the controls of his fingertips because we send them out virtually. Okay? We'd be happy to share that kind of activity with you at some time as well. We do that more in our entrepreneur course. Okay? But he's not really a master of this universe, but he's a helper of this universe. So he's a master of that universe and a helper of this universe. So we'll call you Hotu here, helper of the universe. All right. Okay, so yesterday your excuse was you went to KX first. What's today's excuse?
I haven't been at the toilet.
Why did you go to the toilet? Is the toilet going to come late too? Okay, good. All right. I know you're with all your friends here, but could you stay back there? Could you stay back there? No, only because I want to keep the tables kind of balanced so we have a discussion. Because in this table, she's going to say everything. You're going to have no chance to say anything. So you'll have more of a discussion if you stay over there. Yeah. Tell me how. My koi, okay. All right, are we ready, Hotu? All right. I can do this if you want to go back to Motu. All right. Ooh, that's not a good sign. Anytime there's a cone, that's a bad sign.
Venture capital.
Okay. Let's just
I don't think that's so.
seconds. That sounds like it's working. Great. I think I can take it over from here. All right. Excellent. I'll take it over from here then. Okay. So we'll watch this first one. To me, as you're going to see, that guy who was talking is a guy named Arthur Rock. You'll learn a little bit. He keeps coming back in a couple of the clips, so remember the name Arthur Rock. Rock like him, okay? Yeah, exactly, that's his name. And let's just watch this video and then have a discussion. I'm going to put some discussion questions up for you to think about. All right? So I'll play the video first. And tell me if the sound is okay, if everything's understandable.
Venture capital. I don't think I thought of it first. But I don't know anyone who used the term before I did.
Back in the spring of 1957, Arthur Rock was just a junior banker on Wall Street. But then one day, an unsolicited letter arrived at the office. The letter was unusual, and no one else at his brokerage firm knew what to do with it. It was a cry for help, and it would forever change the trajectory of Arthur Rock's life.
You gotta be lucky. Everybody's gonna be lucky at some time or another. The thing I'd say is I was lucky to be lucky early.
The letter on Arthur Rock's desk had come from 8 engineers in California, a group of brilliant young men who would soon become known as the Traitorous Eight.
We were young guys, a bunch of young engineers and the scientists mostly, working together to craft a semiconductor. They were having a hard time with Shockley, and they were going to leave. Things had deteriorated at Shockley Lab. He was a very difficult person to work with, and a group of us started considering the possibility at least of leaving. So anyhow, we did right.
This prospectus is to introduce a group of senior scientists and engineers who have been working together at Shockley Semiconductor Laboratory
Shockley, you just won a Nobel Prize. It was probably a little presumptuous of us to think we could push him aside.
A group feeling arose to the effect that rather than lead one by one, we believe we are much more valuable to an employer as a group. These were, by their resumes, very superior people. And I thought, gee, maybe there's something here, something more valuable than just to be an employee.
That's something that Arthur saw inspired him to step out of his ordinary role as a Wall Street banker.
And that's when we met Arthur Rock. Arthur came out to meet with a group of us. And Arthur said, you ought to start your own company and we'll find financing for you.
They hadn't thought of this idea themselves.
Nobody thought of starting their own company in those days. And it was a new idea, but it was a good one.
At that time, there was no venture capital, so starting companies was new, it was innovative.
Arthur Rock had to get creative about finding capital for the Traders' Aid. His bank had contacts with rich families like the Rockefellers and the Whitneys, but they weren't interested in backing the startup all the way out in California.
So we made a list of companies.
In fact, we sat down with the Wall Street Journal
Looking for companies to ask to invest in these 8 fellas in forming a new company.
I think we had 35 companies.
All of them said no. No!
The attempt to start a new company might have ended then and there, with the Traders' Aid returning to the job search and Arthur Rock admitting defeat. But then, Arthur received one last lead.
We were pretty much at wit's end, and somebody suggested that I see Sherman Fairchild. Sherman Fairchild was an entrepreneur himself and also a very wealthy man. He right away saw the possibilities and decided that Fairchild Camera Instrument would invest the $1.5 million we were looking for.
I call myself the accidental entrepreneur.
With the $1.5 million Arthur raised, the Traders' Aid started Fairchild Semiconductor in Mountain View, California, a sleepy rural town 35 miles south of San Francisco. Fairchild was the first company to manufacture the sophisticated silicon chips that would power computers, rockets, and spacecraft, paving the way for the high-tech age. In time, the fruit orchards surrounding Fairchild would give way to electronics companies, and the area would become famous as the Silicon Valley.
If they had stayed together and formed Fairchild Semiconductor, probably there'd be no Silicon Valley.
So let's jump in and have a little discussion. I know some of you are still in your discussion. I hear some good questions going on, but this table back here is begging me to answer the first question. Okay? So why don't you first of all give us a quick recap of what happened in the video that we just watched so that we're clear on the story. Because I may be watching the story differently than you guys, and I want to make sure we're watching the same story. So what happened? Where'd your microphone go? Give the whole room a review of the clip in about 10 seconds.
10 seconds.
Okay, everyone else listen please, you may need to help her out. Okay, go ahead. What happened in the clip?
There's something about Arthur Rock.
Okay, there's something about Arthur Rock, good. What else happened? So it's important we really understand what is happening in this clip. So what's happening in this clip besides Arthur Rock?
He tried to raise funds and set up a group.
Okay, even before he tries to raise funds, what's going on in this clip?
Set up the group first.
Okay, he didn't even set the group up. What happens first in this clip?
I think my friend can help.
Thank you, friends. That's what friends are for.
I think 8 engineers working together, and they think that it's better to pay them like a group of engineers, not like that, like a salary man, something like that. So they think that they better to group together and try to find some company paying them as a group.
Okay, great. So it's very important we understand this because, again, I told you from the very beginning, I'm really a big believer in mindset more than process or buzzwords or something like that. So let's understand the situation that popped up. There were these engineers, and they were very unhappy at their job. They worked for a company called Shockley Semiconductor. Okay? That's not important, except it's just kind of famous that historically. Robert Shockley, for you physicists, are there physicists in here? There must be some physicists. Robert Shockley won the Nobel Prize in Physics. What did he win the Nobel Prize for? Somebody tell me. When I ask a question like that, that's a hint to look up Google, okay? I want us to be active and interactive, okay? And I want you to do the same thing in your classes. What did Robert Shockley win the Nobel Prize for? Just look up Shockley. He's So the first thing I'm emphasizing you in any course, I'm going to ask questions and you're going to answer, all right? Oh, sorry, it is William Shockley. Anyway, what did he win the Nobel Prize for?
Semiconductor.
For the researchers on semiconductors,
Okay.
the discovery of the transistor effect.
Exactly. So he's the guy who discovered the transistor. All right? Anybody know what a transistor is? Ah, excellent. You have a lot of expertise at your table. What's a transistor? You shook your head, yes. Transistor.
I'm not sure, but when I was young, I heard this word. It's like something radio.
Yeah. Well, you've heard of transistor radio, yeah. So transistor is a little teeny micro electronic device that replaced something else called a vacuum tube. Okay, vacuum tubes were these old glass things with stuff in it. Basically, a transistor is a switch or an amplifier. That's all we need to know. Don't need to go any further than that. But he won the Nobel Prize for this invention, this incredible invention called the transistor effect, so that you could do this in a semiconductor instead of in a vacuum tube. So vacuum tubes took up a lot of space and they broke easily. Anything electrical you had was a big cabinet to do very little. Once you had transistors, you could begin to squish things smaller and smaller. And in fact, computers today are made up of millions of transistors. Every little switch is a transistor. Okay? That's enough of the physics. Okay, so William Shockley had started a company called Shockley Semiconductor. And there are a whole bunch of these engineers who were upset working for him. The guy was a really tough boss. And the more famous he got, the more difficult he became as a boss. I'm sure we all know people like that. Okay? So these guys were not looking, this is the most important part of the beginning here, they were not looking to start a company. What were they looking to do? Tell me one more time. What were they looking to do?
They want to work together and let them pay like the group of them.
So they felt instead of each one just kind of going and getting their own job at some other company, they had this weird idea that if the 8 of them stayed together, they would be more valuable. You know, like they've been working together, they helped get Shockley Semiconductor going, and they wanted help finding another company to hire them. That was it. They were just looking to continue being research scientists at a company but they wanted to be hired as a group, or they believed they'd be more valuable as a group. That's it. And it's important we understand that. Now, you're the Arthur Rock expert at the table. Now Arthur Rock comes in. Oh, you're the Arthur Rock expert. Yeah, I can tell by your answer. You're the Arthur Rock expert. Okay? They sent out this letter to a whole bunch of people, and one organization they sent it out to was this big bank. A big, rich, moron bank, kind of like Taipan or Bangkok Bank. Honestly, that's what it was. Big American bank, but old style in New York City, nothing high-tech about it, nothing, just a regular old bank. So who is Arthur Rock? Arthur Rock expert, who is Arthur Rock? For me, this is a very, very important question. Okay, I'll tell you why after we find out who is Arthur Rock. Oh, I like the fact she's going to Google, but I was going for a simple answer. In this video, what do they say? Who do they say Arthur Rock is? Ah, say that very loudly.
He's a junior banker.
He's a junior banker
Wall Street company.
in a Wall Street investment bank. He is a junior banker in a Wall Street investment bank. Here's a very difficult question for you. Why is this statement important to me? He was a junior banker in a Wall Street investment bank. If you can understand this next statement, you will understand the way I think. I don't know if that's your goal, but you will understand the way I think when it comes to approaching entrepreneurship in Thailand. Why is it important that he was a junior banker in a Wall Street investment bank? It's a trick question, but I really want us to think about it. Let's get the microphones. You guys have a microphone. Tell me, why is it important that he was a junior banker at a Wall Street investment bank? This, to me, sums up everything we need to know about entrepreneurship in Thailand. Okay? And as some of you who know me, as soon as you hear the answer, you're going to say, oh, Janet. Why is it important that he was a junior banker at a Wall Street investment bank?
I think junior banker is he's like understand the entrepreneur.
Okay. Why does he understand entrepreneur as a junior banker? What's that? That was you, wasn't it?
What I'm thinking is he a junior, so he not a senior yet. So what he make the decisions may not right or wrong, but the opportunity is there. So if he make the wrong decision, so
Stop right there.ได้เอาภาษาไทยเลยได้เลย
โดยสรุปก็คือคิดเอาเองนะคะว่าเขาอยู่ในสถานะของจูเนียร์เฉยๆเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยเวลาเขาตัดสินใจว่าจะลงทุนหรือไม่ลงทุนเนี่ยมันก็จะมีโอกาสในการตัดสินใจได้แต่สมมุติถ้าลงทุนผิดเนี้ยคิดเอาเองค่ะมันก็ไม่ได้มีผลต่อชื่อเสียงเขามากเพราะเขาไม่ได้อยู่ในฐานะของซีเนียร์คือความเข้าใจอย่างนั้น
This is exactly what I believe. And the reason this is so important is because in a lot of talks I do, we hear stuff about, oh, America's like that and Thailand's like this and blah, blah, blah. But let me tell you, America also has Puyai. And in America, Puyai also never do anything new. Because if you're a Puyai, you got to that job by doing old. Every Puyai everywhere in the world is like that. Okay? The fact that this guy was a junior something is the most important part of this story. Especially because right now there are so many Puyai excited about entrepreneurship. Puyai in the government, Puyai in banks, Puyai in big companies, and I would tell you, assuming they're not in the room, because they still give us a lot of money. Puyai will never, ever be able to promote innovation anywhere in the world, except by giving us money. All right? But new ideas have to come from somebody who is not stuck in a top position. Because either your mindset is fixed in order to get to that position, or once you're in that position, in order to keep yourself there, you're only going to answer what is the obvious answer. So the important message here, are there any junior people in the room, or are you guys all Puyai? Okay, you say junior, be careful what you say, because I hope you're junior. Because if you're Puyai, I'm wasting my time. All right? Every one of us who don't feel like we're a Puyai, the opportunity's in our hands. Kanapati, Atigan, those guys cannot do anything. Okay? CEOs cannot do anything. Ratamontri cannot do... This is being recorded. Those guys have a role, but in terms of coming up with new ideas and making them work, you have to be junior, because otherwise you're too scared to make a change. All right? So this, I'm going to show you 8 clips, but this is the most important message of all 8 clips. It wasn't because he was the big boss. It wasn't because the CEO of the bank said, hey, we're going to become venture capitalists. It wasn't because he was rich. He wasn't rich. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. It was because he was junior. He wasn't forced to follow whatever his rigid belief is. So if there's one thing that I try to do in every single workshop, no matter what the topic, is to push a couple of us to see different and think big and act small to make changes, okay? And that's exactly what Arthur Rock did. He just got this letter. I think the fact that he even got the letter is interesting. This letter was just sent to a bank, and they just kind of, I'll give it to Arthur. You know, it's a worthless letter. Give it to Arthur. And Arthur acted on it. This is what an entrepreneurial opportunity looks like. It looks like nothing to everybody except to a few people. Okay? So all of us have an opportunity to be entrepreneurial. We don't have to be starting companies to be entrepreneurial. Arthur Rock was an entrepreneurial investor. Okay? This is the most important lesson I'm going to teach you today. You can all go home now. No. We'll go in a little bit more detail, but I really, really want you to remember that, okay? Because everywhere I go, I'm told, oh, this person's very influential. This person's very rich. I said, if they're influential and rich, they cannot help except give me money, okay? Because they aren't going to understand the innovation. And we're going to see that throughout all these clips, okay? Please remember that's the most important lesson. Okay, next. So Arthur Rock was a junior banker. What qualifications made him a good candidate? He wasn't a Puyai. He didn't, however you describe it, okay? If you describe it from the point of view of risk or responsibility or age or however you describe it, he was a good candidate because he didn't have any of those things forcing him in a fixed direction. Okay? Now, with that in mind, he had this weird idea. These 8 people came to him and said, can you just help us get a job? That's what they said. Can you help us get a job? He could have just said, yeah. Call Jobs R Us or something. But he didn't. He thought, I can see different. I can see a different opportunity here. Maybe let's build a company. Okay? That's step 1 of this process. Junior guy, no responsibility, but very little responsibility, no fixed mindset, not a Puyai, has an idea, and it's not even the idea that was given to him. He comes up with his own idea to regale an opportunity. Okay, any of you who have been in the entrepreneurship program, we know it's regale. Okay, so he assembles a new opportunity. So what does he do next? He says to these guys, we could start a company. What else does he say? He says to the engineers, let's start a new company and I will get you financing. Not I will finance, because he wasn't rich. I will get you financing. Who was the first group of people? This one went by very fast in the video, so you may not get it, but I'm going to bring it out anyway. Who was the first group of investors that he thought he could get money from? Exactly. The Sopan family, basically, the American version. Okay? Sorry? Yeah, the basically American version of all the famous families here. Rockefeller, Whitney, his bank. He's thinking, this is going to be easy. Okay, I may only be a junior banker, but my bank knows all these high-so people. Number one, high-so. Number two, lots of money. What did they do? How much did they invest? Those Whitneys and Rockefellers, how much did they invest?
No.
None.
None.
Right? People tell me they come to me all the time, Antoinette, do you have any investments? I know somebody who's really rich. I said, don't waste my time. Rich is not a requirement to be a good investor in entrepreneurship. It's probably a bad reason. We're going to talk about later. There's actually some good reasons not to invest in entrepreneurial ventures. In fact, we can jump to it. I'll tell you, we'll talk about it later in the second session this morning. I mean, you can make more money off of property in Thailand, right? There's a beer company named after a lion that supports a lot of our stuff. And when we first started working with it, they said, help us be an entrepreneurial investor. And I said, why? You'll make more money building property. They've got property projects all over. Not as many as the other beer company, but they have a lot of property projects, right? It takes a special desire to even want to do this, okay? If you have a lot of money and you're in the system, there are other better investments. So later on today, we're going to talk about why would somebody even want to invest in an entrepreneurial startup. That'll be another question. But the Rockefellers and the Whitneys, basically the rich families in the US, said no. Okay? Who was the next group they went to? Who was the next group? Smart decision, in my opinion. What did they do? What was their next method? What was the next thing they did? The Rockefellers and Whitneys weren't interested, so what was the next thing they did? Thank you. Go ahead. What was the next thing they did?
You mean after the Rothschild?
Yeah, so the first step he thought, oh, this will be easy. I've got these famous families in our bank. They weren't interested. So then they said, who is our next target of investors?
Big company.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell me the whole story. Give me the whole details. Tell me the whole story of what they do.
What did they? Well, they rejected.
No, before that, tell me, you're right. Give me the process that the Arthur Rock and the engineers went through. Tell me the process they followed.
They went.
Your answer is correct. Just go through the detail.
Okay, they went to the list of 35 Wall Street companies.
Okay, so they sat down with the Wall Street Journal and made a list of companies. Did you watch the list very closely? What were the companies on the list?
Big companies.
Not just big companies. Give me some examples.
Motorola.
Sorry? Raw company. What do you mean by that? Well, they were on the Wall Street Journal, but it wasn't just, I mean, there are thousands of companies in the Wall Street Journal, but did anyone see the video? Okay, so one was car companies. Who else?
Motorola.
Motorola, electronics company, mobile phone. Who else? Ford, okay? Who else? Got my microphones. Who else? Anyone else? Magnavox. Some of these companies don't exist anymore. What kind of companies are these?
Technology company.
Companies that are likely to use semiconductors. This is brilliant. This is brilliant, okay? They are very, very smart. They're saying not all Wall Street. Again, we're not only looking for rich. Rich is not enough. We're looking for companies who have money, who make investments, and who are likely to want our technology in the future. Brilliant idea. Come up with a list. How many invested? Still none. Still none. See, it's not easy to do this kind of thing anywhere. Not Thailand, not the US, nowhere, okay? Again, I said it earlier today, I'm always trying to draw parallels. Everyone says the US is different than Thailand. I don't see that many differences, okay? I see there are differences, but there are a lot of the same challenges. So even there, all these high-tech they were high-tech for the time. Car companies, electronics, appliances, the people likely to want to use semiconductors all said no. And they were about to give up. They were about to give up. Until what? I keep missing this table. You guys I keep skipping by you, and I know you're feeling annoyed, so let me give you a chance to answer. So, who finally invested and why? What made that first investor a good investor? So my question is, which has a little bit of a hint in it, who was the first investor in Fairchild? Right? The company ended up getting named after him. So why was Sherman Fairchild a good investor? Why was Sherman Fairchild, he said yes, that's one thing that made him a good investor. But what were some of the things that seemed to make him want to invest? Not just rich, but he was rich. Not just a customer, but one other important thing. What is it?
Potential. New.
But they all had the potential, right? The potential was there no matter what. Why was Sherman Fairchild potentially a better investor than the other people? Besides the fact he said yes. But beyond that, what characteristic made Fairchild different than all those technology companies and different than the Rockefellers and the Whitneys? What made Sherman Fairchild different?
He visited the lab. He was interested in the technology and talked to the team.
Okay. And you're so close. Do this one on my microphone. You're very close. There's one thing that made him different. What did you suggest?
He was located in the west coast of the U.S. and something in the vicinity of 30-something miles of San Francisco.
In fact, he wasn't. Fairchild was based on the East Coast, and in fact, later on, that was one reason he didn't keep investing. Okay, so you would think that was because he was based on the West Coast. Good reason, but that wasn't the reason in this case. One very important reason.
Okay, please.
Okay, why might he have been willing to take a risk?
They see the opportunity of the future.
Yeah, but so does Ford and Magnavox. Why could he see something maybe that nobody else see?
He believed in the team.
Who's got the microphone? Okay. He believed in the team. Why didn't those other guys believe in the team? It's the same team, same smart guys, same everything. What allowed him to see something different than the other guys? Huh?
Not all.
Not old. He was oldish. He was oldish. Did you want to? He was older. He was an entrepreneur. He started Fairchild Camera. So not only was he rich, but he understood the entrepreneurship activity. So this was the important thing. There is an entrepreneurial mindset which changes everything. It's not rich, it's not good looking, it's not high-so, it's the understanding of his entrepreneurial mindset. And that's why I put so much emphasis in it even in an entrepreneurial finance course. Because lots of people had money and said no. Just like today in Thailand, lots of people have money and say no because they don't have the entrepreneurial mindset. Okay? They can't because they're used to owning a big company. By the way, I know this is a misunderstanding in Thailand because we call a lot of these company leaders entrepreneurs. Their grandfathers were entrepreneurs. They are not entrepreneurs. They are CEOs. Okay? Their grandfathers who came to Thailand were the very entrepreneurial people, and they would approach things differently. So Sherman Fairchild had money, but that's not the important part. The important part was he had an entrepreneurial mindset. He could see the possibility when things weren't clear. Big companies, big banks, their problem is they send lots of their employees to get MBAs to do calculations. And if you do enough calculations, you can always convince yourself there's no opportunity. You don't have to believe me, it's on a slide from a famous guy in a few slides. I'll show it to you later. Okay? So these are the things we want to start understanding as we go through these next clips. First of all, the entrepreneurial mindset is important even at the investor side. Okay? So this is what made Sherman Fairchild a great investor. This is what made Arthur Rock a likely good first person. He happened to be a banker, but he was a junior banker. He didn't have any structure behind him that was holding it back, and they invested in Fairchild Semiconductor. Okay, great. I will just set this on the table here for the next clip. All right, let's look at the next clip. Same sort of thing. We spent a long time on this clip because I want to set the foundation. We'll go a little bit more quickly as we move forward, and it'll bring us up towards the present day. So let's look at the second one. Oh, I gotta turn all this back. Freeze. Freeze, all right.
Arthur Rock had gotten a taste of something exciting and significant, but as it turns out, he wasn't the only one trying to figure out how to fund young companies. Just up the road from Fairchild, a handful of businessmen were experimenting with their own version of venture capital, together, around a lunch table in San Francisco.
In the 50s and 60s, there were a group of us in San Francisco that used to get interested in small high-tech companies down the peninsula. There were, I think, 5 of us in our group.
We all had a job, but we had other time on our hands too. We decided to just promote it.
And make sure you look at their job titles as well. Be aware of the jobs that they had as you move along.
Us to come together.
We were just a bunch of young men in San Francisco who knew each other and respected each other.
What it was like was a very close fraternity, I guess I can use that word carefully.
We had a table of 6 or 8 for lunch.
None of us had enough money to do an investment by ourselves, so we had to have help.
If one of us ran across an entrepreneur who was trying to start a company, we'd invite him up for lunch. And after lunch, we'd ask him to step out onto the street corner for a while. Give us 10 minutes and we'd make up our mind as to whether we wanted to invest in his company or not.
I don't remember that.
We didn't do that.
We were too classy to do that.
That's a little bit quick, I think. You know, if the guy's a real nut, why you say goodbye to him without asking him to go get a cup of coffee.
2 members of the group wanted to do even more than gather around a lunch table every 6 weeks. In 1962, Pitch Johnson and Bill Draper put up all their personal savings, quit their day jobs to form a partnership, and hit the streets.
Pitch and I each got a Pontiac leased and went around and knocked on doors, and if it sounded like ABC Electronics, then we'd go in, ask the president to sit down and tell us, what do you do? Well, what do you do? Well, venture capital, what's that? My kids go to school, what does your dad do? My dad's a policeman, my dad's a fireman, my dad's a banker. And what does your dad do? Oh, he's a venture capitalist. Dad, what do you do actually, We were just stumbling around trying to figure out what to do. But
We just knew that if we got involved with good deals and good markets, we could probably build a company, growing companies.
Create companies. You're helping to create something where nothing existed before. And quite a large community gets sustenance that wouldn't have existed unless you had gotten together with this entrepreneur and his team and helped him along the way.
The lunch group had established
A bit quick, I think. You know, if the guy's a real nut, why you say goodbye with him?
The lunch group had established a good formula. Everyone was sharing in the profits and success of these fledgling companies.
Okay, let's move into this one a little more quickly because I don't want to spend as much time. I think we've laid a bit of a foundation. This group here was asking a couple of good questions which are really worth highlighting. First of all, within the video, like I said, this is a video about the history of venture capital investing. In the video, it turns out that the Arthur Rock clip and this clip are in series with each other. Now, we're not going to watch the whole video. The other clips have gaps, as you'll see. But these two happen to be side by side in the actual documentary. And it's worth noting that, as it was just pointed out, I just replayed it so you could hear, it wasn't, one didn't lead from the other. So Arthur Rock had that one opportunity where some engineers sent a message out to him. And then, what's the beginning of this video? I just played it again. A group of young businessmen and engineers were experimenting with their own version of venture capital, okay, north of San Francisco. Now, one thing that's always interesting whenever I watch this video, I wonder if those Fairchild guys had ever sent their letter to these guys, but we never know, okay? So let's jump into this. One thing that's interesting here is these guys are approaching the venture capital process in a very different way. You know, Arthur Rock was a junior banker, but he's still thinking it from an investment point of view, right? He's a banker. He's thinking, I'll get money from here, I'll invest here, I'll get a return of investment. In many ways, his plan for Fairchild was more like an investment. What are these guys doing, on the other hand? Now, I know they're investing, but why are they investing? What are their goals, and how do they seek opportunities? Those are the questions. The culture of this group is very different than the culture of Arthur Rock. So what do you think? What's going on in this video? Let's first of all understand what's going on in this video. Who's got a microphone in front of them? You guys. What's going on in the video first? Let's do a quick overview of the video.
Actually, it's very difficult to catch, but what I guess is like they come together, they want to find opportunities, and after one lunch, some in the group say no, it's too quick, and then only two decide to go furthermore, which they are Jonathan and Draper.
Yeah.
They just, you know, like ลงขันนะคะ put their all money together and pull money together. Thank you. ลงขัน is pull, right?
Thank you.
And then they just search for the young company that have a good opportunity for them to put money in. Huh? A pool, yes. I just went. Did the swimming this morning too? Okay, anyway, yeah.
Great, so very good, very well done. So let me just add a couple of things. So first of all, there are these groups, this group of guys that got together at lunch, okay? So already their approach is very different than Arthur Rock. Arthur Rock is seen as an investment opportunity. These guys, if exploring is valuable, we all have time. How do we make exploring valuable? Exploring is valuable if you enjoy it. Now, I know that sounds like a very silly answer, but these guys enjoy getting together at lunch and talking about ideas. There was no other goal. There was no, it wasn't, hey, I'm only coming to lunch if I get a 30% return on investment. That's the way most people look at entrepreneurial investments. And that's the way most of you guys look at Explore when I send you out. John, how do I know I'm going to see something interesting? I don't know. You're probably going to see something boring. Okay? So the other real important part of the entrepreneurial mindset, whether you're starting a company or investing in it, is you need to enjoy. You need to actually enjoy the explore. So that when you've gotten through exploring, you can say to yourself, hey, that was fun. No value, no investment opportunity here, but I enjoyed that. That was kind of fun. I learned some things, enjoyed seeing these guys for lunch, talked about some companies. No investment opportunities, but the explore itself was fun. Okay? Many of you probably have screensavers that say something like, it's not the destination, it's the journey. Okay? But that's what this means in Explore. It's more than a screensaver. For some people, it's the destination itself is not the goal. It's enjoying, just enjoying the journey, no matter what happens. Because if it's truly Explore, you don't know the outcome. You cannot have this guaranteed return on investment. So they enjoy getting together for lunch and having a chat. They enjoyed each other's company. They enjoyed the lunch. They probably enjoyed eating. They enjoyed talking about upcoming technologies. And that was it. That's the benefit of exploring. If you like exploring, it is not a risk because it's valuable in itself. But exploring is not valuable if you need a return on investment. There's no way to guarantee, because by definition, explore means to go in a direction where you have no idea what the outcome is going to be. This is really the toughest mindset to teach and to explain to people, especially if you've been kind of raised to have a very clear answer and a clear objective to everything you do. Most things in the real world aren't like that. Okay? So they're getting together for lunch, they're enjoying the lunch, they're exploring. That in itself is valuable for them. And then, as it turned out, they found some opportunities. And that's when these two guys, they had enough. At that point, it moved from explore to developing an opportunity because they had enough benefits. They had enough investments. Everybody was sharing. And at that point, now the exploring is not happening anymore. Two guys say, wait a minute, this is a real opportunity. This is an opportunity to try to build something bigger. Now we're taking a risk. Now we're going to quit a job. Now we're going to sign a lease on a car. Now we're going to waste our time every single day. Okay? But in this video, there's two parts of this clip. The first part is the explore part, where the value in getting together is enough. From that explore, there was enough of an opportunity to pop out for two of them. Notice, they didn't all join, right? There's 6 or 7 people getting together for lunch, but 2 guys quit their jobs. 2 guys felt the risk reward was worth it. That's when it went from explore to let's try this experiment. That's when risk came in. Okay, so again, mindset, I'm glad I can hear that program mindset into your minds, okay? The mindset is important, but the explore mindset is different than, okay, now we've had a taste. Now, let's invest. What are we going to invest? Well, we're going to invest our salary. We're going to give up our jobs. That's an investment. We're going to use our savings. That's an investment. We're going to sign a lease on a car. That's an investment. We're going to spend all of our time every single day. Not just hanging out with our friends anymore. Now we're doing it. Okay? So in this video, we move from exploring to actually investing. In their case, they're investing time and lost salary and stuff like that. Okay? But that's the shift in the mindset. In the explore mindset, the only way exploration makes sense is if you enjoy the exploring itself. Later on, you make a decision, all right, here is a potential opportunity, I'm going to go out and test it. All right? So that's kind of what happens in there. How did they find opportunities? We pretty much answered it, but I want to be clear. Where did the two guys, after they quit their jobs, where did they find opportunities?
Street corners.
Okay, sorry, let me be clear. The video has two parts. This clip has two parts. The first part, they're hanging out together at lunch. The second part is after the two guys, Draper, Johnson, quit their job and go on and start. How did those two guys find opportunities? It's different than the first part of the clip. How did those two guys find opportunities? Pitch Johnson and Bill Draper, how did they find opportunities?
Maybe I don't catch it, but they find some guy named Bill, the Peter company.
Well, he was one of the guys in the group, but once they said, we're going to quit our jobs, we're going to lease these cars, and what are we going to do? You guys have a microphone, you have to answer. Yeah, you do have two mics. You guys are, okay, you hold that one, I'll take this one. What did they do? I want, again, this is an important part. We're now in the experiment phase. What did they do to find opportunities? Pick the microphone back up. It's a very simple answer. They drove around knocking on doors.
And then they try to sell their product.
What product? I didn't see that part of the video. But you're on the right track. But so first of all, nobody called them. They went around knocking on doors. And when they knocked on the door, what happened?
They sell the idea or something they're gonna do.
They didn't even really sell the idea. Remember, this is early in the process. What happened?
Explore.
Nobody opened the door. A few people opened the door, and when they opened the door, what happened? They talked, yes. What did they say?
The same thing as her. I don't know.
Okay, then I'll give you the answer. No, they basically, I know this sounds very, very simple, but these are the things we jump over all the time. They had to get in a conversation. What do you guys do? What does this company do? Remember the joke? Well, what do you do? I'm a venture capital. What's a venture capital? So, well, we try to find money for companies. At that stage, they're trying to build this opportunity. Okay? So first part of the clip, just exploration. A couple of guys getting together at lunch, enjoying each other's company, enjoying lunch, enjoying talking about technology. No different than any group of engineers. Now, two guys say, wait a minute, I think there's more of a real opportunity here. Let's jump in. Quit our job, pool our savings, okay? Pool, right? Lease two cars, and now they just drove around knocking on doors. What does this company do?
Find location.
What's that?
Find location to build a company.
Well, they didn't even, honestly, I just want you to understand how basic this really was. They were just going door by door, knocking the door. What kind of technology are you in? Do you need help? Okay, until they could build companies from it. Okay, this is the very early part of an opportunity. And again, if exploring is one of the hardest things to teach, the second hardest thing to teach is, we say it all the time, that act small. When you need to go out and take small steps until you figure it out. Everybody just wants to jump right to customer 1 million. Everybody, we're going to jump right to customer 1 million. But you cannot have 1 million customers without customer number 1. Same way with these guys. They may have had a dream for investors. At the beginning, they had to just go knock on doors. What do you guys do? Well, what do you? Well, we're kind of an investor. Well, what's that? Okay, what's your technology for? And then eventually they found somebody that they could invest in, and the company needed some money, and then they grew something, and then they start to show success. Okay? So this is the very early beginning of the act small phase that we say. So you'll hear us say over and over, see different, think big, thinking big, but you have to act small. You have to get out and knock on doors. Okay? Let's do one more, and then we'll take a break. Okay? I want to do one more before we get going. So this is back to Arthur Rock. This is not the next part of the video. This jumps a little bit ahead, but you'll hear about it. And this is a company you've probably heard of.
Meanwhile, back at his desk in New York.
Well, I wanted to do more of these venture capital type deals. But the money was all,
Thank you. There he is. You recognize him now.
in the east, and the scientists who had moved it from the east to the west had all the ideas.
Okay, hold on a second. I want to start over because it's very important you understand the beginning of this. This is what we were talking about earlier. This is a very important historical point. So let's get started here. And take note of where Arthur Rock is and what are the actions.
Meanwhile, back at his desk in New York,
Well, I wanted to do more of these venture capital type deals. But the money was all in the east, and the scientists who had moved it from the east to the west had all the ideas. So I saw a great opportunity in bringing the East Coast money out, backing these people on the West Coast. Go west, young man.
in 1961, Arthur Rock raised $5 million from East Coast investors and moved to San Francisco to start his own venture capital firm. He found a partner in Tommy Davis, who had been managing investments for a California oil company. Davis and Rock quickly became the biggest venture players in town, funding a series of hugely successful technology companies. And in the close-knit Silicon Valley community of the 1960s, it was only a matter of time before Arthur Rock would once again cross paths with the traitorous eight. Throughout the 1960s, Fairchild was bleeding talent. The lure of stock options and independence inspired many of the brilliant young engineers to peel off and start their own companies. But Gordon Moore and Bob Noyce, its two most important founders, remained loyal to their company until May of 1968, when Fairchild's East Coast management made a fatal mistake.
Noyce was the logical internal candidate to be the next CEO, but they decided they were going to look on the outside. And that changed the whole ballgame. Noyce said, I'm going to leave. Are you interested? So I said, okay, let's do it.
They needed financing, and they called me to see whether I'd be interested. They came to me with no business plan other than what they verbally said they wanted to do.
Arthur said he needed something to talk to potential investors with.
Just to give people something.
We wrote a business plan. It was one page,
double-spaced, and that was it.
It just says we were going to make things out of silicon and some interesting electronic devices.
Oh, I said in general terms they were going to make memories.
And it had lots of typos, and I think Bob typed it himself. It's not a very profound document, but it's really kind of cute.
I said, how much money do you need? And they said $2.5 million. And I said, okay. What percentage of the company do you think you'd be happy giving up for $2.5 million? And they thought, said, well, how about half? And I said, that's fine. And within a day and a half, I raised $2.5 million.
Intel opened its doors in July of '68, and Arthur Rock's partnership with its founders was only just beginning.
Arthur was our chairman of the board in those days.
I spent a lot of time there. Venture capitalists do write the check, but that isn't all we do. Writing a check is easy. Yeah, it doesn't take much ink. I attended staff meetings. I Arthur asked good questions, was on the phone to him a lot. An excellent board member, offered advice, planning, setting up an audit committee, customer relations, interviewed a lot of people, built all of pieces of enterprise. I just brought what I consider common sense to the table. He even met his wife there. He gave us guidance on when not to go public as well as when to go public. I was very involved in that. This was all new to Intel, but wasn't new to me. We went public the same day that Playboy Enterprises went public, at the same price. And a few years later, one of the analysts says, the market has spoken. It's memories over memories, 10-1.
Okay, let's jump into this. We'll go through this part a little more quickly. So first, let me ask a question for you guys. Anybody heard the term S-curve? S-curve, it's a very popular term these days. S-curve. Do you know what an S-curve is? What's an S-curve? He's looking up Google, that's good. What's an S-curve? S-curve is a learning process, so maybe. I think there's an easier answer. What's an S-curve? An S-curve is a curve that looks like an S. Exactly, she knows, okay? An S-curve is a curve that looks like an S. So that's the easy answer. Next question is, what do people use S-curves to describe? The what? Okay, that's a mistake. You're right, they do that, and it's overused. These consultants in Thailand do that all the time. We've got to find a new S-curve. S-curve is nothing about a company. S-curve is about an entire industry. Okay? So this is a huge mistake, but companies pay a lot of money to have corporate trainers to come in and teach them the wrong things, and that's one of them. So an S-curve is an industry, and we can look at venture capital the same way. So in an industry, any new industry starts off with a brand new innovation, and it starts out slowly, right? Exactly, it starts out slowly at the bottom, but eventually more and more people jump in and it grows fast and eventually gets to a point where it matures and slows down again. We are seeing the same thing in these videos with venture capital. So at the very beginning down here was the first and the second clip. But now we're moving probably up in here. What's happening in S-curve at this point? Down here, there's only one or two people, right? The initial innovators, the initial inventors are down here. But up in here, what's happening in this part of the S-curve for an industry? What's happening? A lot more firms, right? A lot more competition. And so we see some of that, right? There's a lot more firms going on in Silicon Valley. Okay? So first of all, let's talk about Arthur Rock. What's the opportunity that Arthur Rock saw? Very, very different from the original clip. Now, what's the opportunity that Arthur Rock sees? What's the opportunity he sees now at the beginning of this clip? You guys are hiding all my microphones on this one. What's the opportunity he sees? Let's go back to this table. This table seems to know everything about S-curves and stuff. You're the S-curve expert. Okay. What's the opportunity that Arthur Rock sees in this clip, which is very, very different than the opportunity he saw in the first clip? In the first clip, he's almost the inventor, right? These guys come with him for an idea to get a job, and he says, wait a minute, I can think of something new, completely new. But in this case, it's not new anymore. What is he seeing now? He's probably early in the S-curve, but not at the beginning. He's kind of up in here, all right?
So he saw the big growth, and he saw the opportunity to sell like from the east side, maybe move to the west side.
Okay, great, exactly. This is very, very important. Let me give you just a little bit of a history of the U.S., because in this case, the history is important. As you probably know, most of the U.S. started on the East Coast and went to the West Coast, okay? And the East Coast still today has the big cities, right? New York City, Washington, D.C., all of these big cities. And traditionally, that's where all the money is. Okay? And that's where all the original big companies were. And then a little bit later on, maybe 100 years ago, when farming became important, more than 100 years ago now, maybe 150 years ago, when farming became important, okay, then we had some big companies in the middle, in Chicago, and Chicago became kind of big. But in the 1950s, and even in the 60s, there wasn't much going on the West Coast. Probably the biggest single thing that happened on the West Coast in the 60s was I was born. That was the biggest thing. That was the most exciting thing. Okay? Some other things happened as well, but I was born on the West Coast in the 60s, okay? But aside from that, from a business point of view, not a lot went on the West Coast. So all the money was on the East Coast. It's kind of like today, all the money's in Bangkok, right? But we heard in the video that all the scientists were on the West Coast, and the question is why, and I don't expect you to know, so I'll just tell you. The government spent a lot of money on research. Anybody know why governments spend money on research, especially the US government?
For war.
For war, exactly. For the Cold War, for war. And so, first of all, they needed to be in a place away from cities because they were blowing things up and flying things and stuff like that. So they set up, and even today, a lot of the West Coast is government land. Like Nevada. You ever heard of Nevada as a state? It's like 95% owned by the government, by the federal government. That's how much land. They have land for shooting up missiles and blowing up rockets and capturing UFOs and all kinds of stuff. Okay? So that's the reason. You don't have to know that, but you just have to understand there was this historical reason that all these scientists were forced to go out west. Even the nuclear bomb, which was built in the 40s, right? The late 30s and 40s, they built it out in New Mexico. You can't build it in Philadelphia, right? You have to be out way, way away from. So just historically through World War II and through the Cold War, the government kept opening up government research labs in the West, and scientists had no choice. Just go out and become a scientist. Okay? So these scientists had this scientific know-how, and they began at the very beginning of that S-curve to say, if I have scientific know-how, potentially I can start a company. And so scientists, all the new science research is happening on the West Coast, all the money is on the East Coast. Arthur Rock, this is the Bacall again, he sees the opportunity to, some of you guys who've been in my entrepreneurship boot camp, what does the word entrepreneur mean? You've heard me say it in Thai, Pu Bacall, God, Bacall. Well, what's it mean in French? What's entre mean in French? Entre. What's it mean? Entry. No, look it up in, you got Google, don't you? You've heard of Google, right? Entre in French, what does it mean? Between, exactly. We've met each other before. Entrepreneur is the person in between groups of people that don't normally interact, such as sciences way out west and banks in the East. What did he say? The banks in the East had no desire to invest out west. They didn't understand it. They are just like big companies that I see in Thailand, right? They want to invest in the markets they understand, in the businesses they understand, property, retail. Again, it's not that different to what we see in Thailand, okay? Big banks invest in big buildings, they invest in retail companies. They're not going to invest in high-tech companies somewhere else, all right? So what I see going on in Thailand is actually not that different. So when I keep hearing people say, oh, you know, Western people think different, they're educated. Okay, maybe those things are true, but when it comes to this part of the process, it was the same problem in the US. And therefore, I think there's some opportunities for us to solve the problem in the same way by thinking more entrepreneurially. So Arthur Rock now, he had that spark to begin with Fairchild. He ran an experiment and it worked, and now he's looking to do more. Now, things have moved up that S-curve. He raised the money, and he had no problem raising the money, right? I heard you say it. How much did he raise? 2.2 2.5 million? You said 2.5 million earlier. Okay? Yeah, so this time when he wants to start a fund, he can raise the money very quickly. He's got a name, and the whole concept of venture capital is moving up the S-curve. Takes his 2.5 million out to California and starts investing in startup companies. And remember what they said, all of these other companies are starting up as well. These engineers are leaving Fairchild. Why did they leave Fairchild? Well, because it's an East Coast company. We were talking about this before. The East Coast management didn't understand that this guy should have been put in charge. So now these last two guys, Noyce and Moore, left and started a company called Intel, and we all know the company Intel. So that's this, now we're beginning to get into companies that we've heard of. All right? So the main things to take away from this is we're now, if you think of venture capital as an industry with its own S-curve, we're now way out of the beginning. We're moving up that curve now. Okay? And we're beginning to see many players in the market, and we're beginning to see some maturity. And most importantly, what's the final question? What does a VC do besides invest? What does a VC do besides invest? Or what did Arthur Rock do for Intel? Strategy? What else? Management? What else? Coaching? What else? Just about anything you say. He helped with HR, audit board. He helped set up everything. IPO, customer relations, finding customers. So I want you to listen in the other clips we listened to. The venture capital is not just giving money. Okay? Today, most of the venture capitalists that I meet in Thailand all come from banks. Okay? Or they come from big families and they've been given money by the Thai government and they call themselves venture capital. But it's important, the venture capitalist is doing more than just giving money. The venture capitalist has a very important role in helping build that company. It's not just an investment. And we're going to see that in the next clips, okay? Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll do a few more clips and we'll see how the venture capitalist role continues to evolve and how it has a more important role than just giving money. Okay? Break. This is the start of a venture capital firm called Kleiner Perkins. Raise your hand if you've heard of Kleiner Perkins. Moan, yeah, exactly. The guy who wrote this book is from Kleiner Perkins. If you don't raise your hand, I'm going to take the book back. Okay? So we're going to hear the story now about how Kleiner Perkins got started, which is the firm that Randy, the guy who wrote this book, works for today. Okay? So let's watch this, and again, I want you to be asked. I'm going to put more questions up, but the questions are very similar. Let's watch how the whole industry continues to evolve and move up this S-curve, okay, because we keep seeing stories that are further along the process time-wise. And let's also keep asking ourselves, what does the venture capitalist do? Because hopefully it's clear by now, they don't just give money, okay? They have a role which is much more important than money, and a mindset which is much more than just invest. Okay? So let's take a look at this one, and we'll ask some more questions.
Two Silicon Valley engineers, Eugene Kleiner and Tom Perkins, formed what would become one of the most... Two Silicon Valley engineers, Eugene Kleiner and Tom Perkins, formed what would become one of the most successful venture firms of all time.
Well, I sort of got into venture capital by the back door. I was working for the Hewlett-Packard Company when I had an idea for a radically improved kind of laser. And then I started a company to manufacture the lasers. When it was all over, I realized, gee, I had been a venture capitalist. I put up the money. I put up the management. So then when I met Gene Kleiner, who had left Fairchild, we were both planning to go into the venture capital business. And we realized we complemented each other. I mean, I'm pretty intense and high-strung, and Gene was sort of calm and portly and had a soothing Viennese accent. Eugene was just brilliant. He was fun to be with. I remember once we met an entrepreneur, and after he left, I said, Gene, you know, do you trust him? And Gene said, I would trust him with my life, but not my money. And that's how it started. We hung up our shingle, and nothing happened. The phone didn't ring. We had a part-time secretary, and we called out, nobody called in. We saw some deals, and we did some deals. We lost money in our original deals, and I'll mention them even though they were very embarrassing. The most notorious and maybe the funniest was a company called Snow Job, which was a scheme to convert motorcycles into snowmobiles and back and forth, which actually worked and it was a lot of fun. But one of the fuel crises landed at about the time we were ready to go into production, and we couldn't get distributors, and so it failed. So Eugene and I thought, you know, this is not working. We've got to do something differently. Tandem was a huge risk for Kleiner Perkins. If Tandem had failed, there would have never been a second Kleiner Perkins fund.
I think I was 33. I was young in terms of people starting companies. But there weren't a lot of people starting companies, so.
Well, Jim Trabig, very smart guy, very impressive. He had this idea, which he carried, not the technical part of it, but the need for a truly fault-tolerant computer. A computer that would never fail.
At that time, for instance, the New York Stock Exchange would fail about every day or every other day. And something would go wrong in it, and it would destroy data. People knew the problem, but they didn't have a solution.
So just think of it, credit checking, airline reservations, banking.
All financial things.
Hospitals.
All communications.
Just all kinds of things. Where it's just not acceptable to have the computer go down.
We knew, Tom and I knew, that if we could figure out a different kind of computer architecture to solve this problem, that we could create a big company. The problem was IBM had won the mainframe battle in '74, and there was an article that said there would never be a new computer company. Never. That was '74. And the cover was a picture of a shark, and IBM was eating up every company. When you think about what decisions are being made, you got IBM wiping out GE, Siemens. So it would be easy not to want to go after that, right? So you have to be brave. I mean, you have to see it and you have to be brave. And being brave is one thing you've got to say about time. You've got to look to get money from strong people, because weak people don't invest in tough times. But that's when most of the big winners are created.
Well, first of all, we didn't want to be the only backers of Tandem. We tried to raise venture capital. I made a trip back east.
I remember the first time we gave the pitch.
Jimmy was straight out of Texas, a real character, and I didn't think he'd go over very well on Wall Street.
He had to take me to buy a suit. He probably shared that.
I literally took him to Brooks Brothers and shoes, socks, the works.
He always said, I forget what he said, but he could buy the suit, but that still didn't help.
And took him back to Wall Street, and of course the first thing he said is, "Now how I looked, Tom dressed me."
Tom was a little more sophisticated than me.
But we didn't get the money.
untried management, unlikely idea. Most people would not have thought this was going to be a big winner.
But I felt strongly enough about Tandem that even if we had to put up all the money, we would do it. And then finally, the last minute, Johnson put in a small investment.
I like to think that Tom felt my presence would be helpful in raising money elsewhere.
It ratified our concept.
I was credible in those days.
Hi, I'm standing here next to a beautiful Tandem computer. I think everyone recognizes this fine computer.
It took us a long time to get that first order.
The very first customer was Citibank.
When we got the first order and the computers performed as expected, even better, the growth took off and became explosive.
We went 7, 25, 50, 100 million, 200 million, coming up to $1 billion, and we were a Fortune 500 company in '82.
You use a Tandem computer today, pretty much anytime you use your credit card. Brand.
Okay, let's jump into this for a second. One question I just had, which is probably worth clarifying. Firm, in this case, means a company. Firm is another word for company. Okay, just so you know that sometimes we say the firm, we mean the company. Okay, with that terminology. Okay, so when Eugene Kleiner and Tom Perkins started their firm, started Kleiner Perkins, how did they find opportunities? Huh? Okay, so the laser was actually Tom's. So Tom launched his company called with the University Lasers, and he put up all the money, got started, and everything else. It was actually not a very big company, but he launched it, made some money off of it. But when they decided they wanted to become venture capitalists, where did they find opportunities? Where did they find opportunities? It's very important.
I guess they look for the company that invent new technology things.
Okay. That's true, and I just want to emphasize, it's still early enough. Nobody called us. Nobody called in. We went out. We had to find everything ourselves. Again, I always want to keep emphasizing that because, there's this belief that, people are going to knock on our door when we have a great idea. That's not true. You have to go out and build your opportunities, okay? Even if you're going to become probably the world's most famous venture capital firm, you have to start out by creating your opportunities, okay? Every venture capitalist I know in Thailand makes us go visit them, and that annoys me, okay? Especially because we usually have something to offer them. They don't have anything to offer us except government money. All these VCs have been given government money to distribute, okay? So that is, again, this isn't a tricky answer. I just want to keep emphasizing, if you're trying something new, you've got to go out, okay? No matter how great you think the idea is, most people are not going to think it's a great idea. Including, in the case of, let's talk about how that firm did, and then we'll talk about Tandem. How is their firm doing? They got this venture capital firm going, how well did it do? How well did it do?
Not good.
Not good. It did badly. In fact, as he pointed out, if they had not found Tandem, they would have died. That would have been the end of the firm, and there would have not been another fund. Okay? So they tried to get Kleiner Perkins going. By the way, 2 Silicon Valley engineers. They were both engineers. They started this fund, and they couldn't get anything. They had a lot of stupid ideas like motorcycles that could be converted to snowmobiles and stuff like that. All right? But it didn't work, and they were about to die. And then they find this company. Was it an obvious, great opportunity? Tandem Computer, was it a great opportunity? Was it a great opportunity, Tandem Computer?
It seems like it's not a good opportunity, but because I think they see that.
So why? What were the things that made it seem like it was not a good opportunity?
Because there's already a big company.
What's the big company?
IBM.
Okay, so again, this is the same sort of thinking that we can talk about right at the beginning. And you see this over and over in the history of innovation. There will never be another computer company. The industry is set. We've got IBM. IBM just gobbles up these little computers, these little computer companies. There will never be another computer company, right? This is that same big company thinking. This is not really any different than going at the very beginning when Arthur Rock was working for a big investment bank. Oh, don't worry about that small stuff, right? We think in big, all right? And that's, again, a lot of the investors I meet have a lot of money, but they cannot see a small opportunity that can grow. They can only see IBM-like opportunities, okay? So Business Week or whatever it was, whatever business magazine, there will never be another computer company. And here comes Tandem along the way saying, I've got a new way of doing things. Tom Perkins liked it. Did anybody else like it? Not at the beginning. Who finally helped Tom Perkins? This is a very important question. Who helped Tom Perkins? Well, Eugene Kleiner was his partner. Who helped Kleiner Perkins in this case? Pitch Johnson. Who's Pitch Johnson? No, he's not a city banker. You have all seen Pitch Johnson earlier today. Who was Pitch Johnson? He's not just a friend, although he might have been a friend. Where did you guys see Pitch Johnson already? Hi, Ro. Yeah, the second clip, exactly. Who was Pitch Johnson in the second clip?
He's the one that jumped out to be the venture capitalist.
Yeah. With Bill Draper. So Draper Johnson was one of the earlier firms. Pitch Johnson, that was the guy who says, what do you do, Dad? Well, venture capital. What's that? You know, that was the earlier clip. So this is an interesting thing, understanding the community here. There's this, so Tom Perkins is trying to get, or Kleiner Perkins, but Tom Perkins is trying to get this going. And this other guy, Pitch Johnson, I was credible in those days. I mean, he's joking, he's credible today. But I mean, he was an earlier not a huge difference, probably 5 years difference, earlier generation fund. And he saw an opportunity. Before that, nobody was interested. Only Tom Perkins seemed to see a benefit here. Again, it wasn't like it was like great technology, everybody thought it was incredible, everybody's running to jump in. New opportunities always look like this. New opportunities always look like non-opportunities. That's the other thing that annoys me about the Puya. They want to see a great opportunity that guarantees $1 billion. I said, opportunities don't look like that. Every opportunity we've seen today, going all the way back to Arthur Rock, only one person saw an opportunity. Everyone else thought it was stupid. Going back to the very first clip. Same with this clip, Tandem. Tom Perkins says, God, I can see it, but no one else can see it. Finally, a second guy, Pitch Johnson, comes along and says, okay, I kind of see it too, and that helped build it up. Okay? And you're going to see this in a couple more clips. The very, very beginning, only one or two people see the real opportunity. Okay? I know the dream everyone has. I hear it at meetings when I'm with the Ministry of Science and talking venture capital. Somebody's going to, somehow we're going to be handed this this business plan that says, this is an incredible opportunity. No one else knows it but you. And we say, great. You know, that doesn't exist. In fact, what happens is nobody knows it. You have to take this risk. All right? So Tom saw this opportunity, Tom Perkins. Somehow Pitch Johnson, who had some credibility, finally began to see it. They invested. That was the only investment Kleiner Perkins made that made money up until that point. They had lost everything else. But what was the return on investment? Everyone see the numbers? Yeah, they invested, what was the original investment? 1.7 million? 1.4 million, and in 1997, 3 billion. That's a pretty good return on investment, okay? You don't need to know how to figure out a formula to know that that's a good return on investment. All right, and this is the kind of way that they're thinking. Okay, one last thing, and then we're going to move on. So there were two aspects of the Silicon Valley. If you watch these clips, you're going to see it's a very small number of people involved. So one was Pitch Johnson, going back to clip number 2. Where did Eugene Kleiner's come from? Where did Eugene Kleiner come from? This is a trickier question, but one of the 8 engineers, he was actually from Fairchild. There are diagrams, you can look up on Google, there are diagrams that show, it's probably not so true these days, but certainly through like the 90s, every company in Silicon Valley could trace back to Fairchild. Okay? Because those engineers went off to start new companies, and they started companies, and they started companies. Okay? So Tom Perkins didn't, but Eugene Kleiner was one of the 8 engineers. He was in that picture of 8. Okay? So that just shows the interesting part of the community. Okay, let's go back. Let's look at the next clip. We're making good progress now. We're kind of getting it. So this is also about Tom Perkins.
I was a nerd, a highly motivated, impatient-driven workaholic.
Okay, so this is going to be more about Tom Perkins, and one of my questions for you is, who is Tom Perkins, especially where did he go to school? What schools did he go to? He went to 2 schools. I want you to guess what schools he went to. One of them's obvious because it says, but the other one I want you to guess. Okay, but you'll get some other questions as well.
I was a nerd, a highly motivated, impatient-driven workaholic nerd who accidentally became an athlete and got some sort of social polish at a school for nerds, MIT. I scrambled to get into a degree where I thought I could earn a living, which was electronic engineering. I did that for a while, and oh my God, this is pretty boring. And I thought, well, you know, I've heard about business school. Maybe I should take a crack at that. And this is where I got inspired by George Dorio.
Professor George Dorio was a father figure to a generation of young men at Harvard Business School. This French expatriate had the distinction of starting the first corporation dedicated exclusively to venture investing, American Research and Development, founded in 1946. Ironically, Dorio's lasting impact would not be through ARD, which in its entire 25-year history made only one notable investment. Instead, Dorio's most important influence came through the spell he cast over his Harvard classroom.
Dorio was very controversial, even at the time at Harvard.
He taught a course called manufacturing, which really had nothing to do with manufacturing. And it was an extremely popular course, and it was all about starting companies and technology.
We talked about entrepreneurs. You had some of them as guests. What it was like to start a company.
His lectures were how to dress, how many drinks you should have at a cocktail party.
It was sort of a George Dorio philosophy of life. Every year he'd take one whole session on how to read the New York Times.
He'd hold up the paper and say, you should be able to read this paper in 4 minutes. What is the first section?
He said, now the first thing you want to do is go to the obituary page. There you will learn the lives that are important and the kind of life that you can build for yourself.
He would talk about working with entrepreneurs, and when times got tough, as they always will, and he made that point, that he would invite the entrepreneur over to his home. They'd have dinner, and then he'd just sit him down in his library and play phonograph records of French marching music. You know, just to deal with the psychological wounds, you know,
When he was talking about venture capital starting companies, he was as good as there was because he's the only guy who understood it.
I bought it all. Hook, line, and sinker.
We are now entering our fourth generation of computers. Difficult problems which once required 30 hours of work by a computer as large as the house can now be solved in 12 seconds by a computer no bigger than a bathtub.
In 1976, the computer was about to get personal, expanding beyond the government, institutions, and businesses to enter the home. For venture capitalists, this represented the opportunity of a lifetime.
When we turned on Apple Computer, we didn't even turn it down. We didn't agree to meet with Jobs and Wozniak.
Oh, that would have been a fabulous investment if we'd made it. But we didn't. They said, oh no, we're not really in that business.
I thought we could use computer home and put recipes on it. I sent my partner down to look at Apple. He came back and he said, the guy kept me waiting for an hour, and he's very arrogant. And of course, that's Steve Jobs. I said, well, let's let it go. That was a big mistake.
In 1976, the only people who believed in a personal computer were the geeks and nerds who gathered at homebrew computer clubs. At one such club, 21-year-old Steve Jobs had partnered with Steve Wozniak to create a circuit board kit they called the Apple I. Steve Jobs was working at Atari at the time, so the most obvious person to ask for startup money was his boss, Nolan Bushnell.
They needed an investment, and they offered me a third of the Apple computer for $50,000, and I said, gee, I don't think so. I could have owned a third of the Apple computer for $50,000. A big mistake. But I said, call Don Valentine, because Don had a high probability of seeing the opportunity.
So we had our meeting. I went to Steve's house and we talked, and I was convinced it was a big market just embryonically beginning. Steve was in his Fu Manchu look, and his question for me, tell me what I have to do to have you finance me. I said, we have to have someone in the company who has some sense of management and marketing and channels of distribution. He said, fine, send me 3 people. I sent him 3 candidates. One he didn't like, one didn't like him. The third one was Mike Markula. Mike Markula worked for me at Fairchild before he went to Intel.
He called me up and said, there's 2 guys over in Los Altos that could really use your help. And you ought to go see them. I said, okay. Because that's what I did on Mondays. I was retired. I think I was 32 when I retired from Intel. But 1 day a week, I would help people start companies and write business plans. I did it for free, just from the interaction with bright people that had a lot of fire in their belly. So I went over and talked to the boys. The 2 of them did not make a good impression on people. They were bearded, they didn't smell good, they dressed funny, young, naive. But Woz had designed a really wonderful, wonderful computer technology that was really advanced. The problem was, you could walk down the street in 1976 and talk to 100 people and say, would you like a personal computer? And they go, what's that? And so I told them, I said I'd help them write a business plan. So I got to working on it. And I said, gosh, you know, the opportunity here is just too great. The business plan said that with $142,000, we could be cash flow positive in 9 months. And I came to the conclusion that we could build a Fortune 500 company in less than 5 years. I said I'd put up the money that was needed.
Not only did he write the check, Mike Markula came out of retirement becoming the president and CEO of Apple. His first order of business, build a board of directors. And the first call he made was to Arthur Rock.
Arthur would have missed Apple if it weren't for Mike Markula.
Jobs and Wozniak came up to see me, and they were very unappealing. Goatee, long hair. Markula said, well, before you make up your mind, there's a computer show, and you ought to come down and see what's going on.
And he did. He thought something was happening. He wasn't quite sure what.
There was this huge auditorium, and there was this booth with everybody around it. I couldn't even get next to it. And it was the Apple booth, and it turned out that I sure made an investment.
Then I got a call from Don Valentine. He says, I want to put some money in that company. I said, okay, you got to come on the board then. Don's background is sales and distribution and customer satisfaction. Arthur's expertise comes from the way financial markets work and how to choose people. I don't think there's a company today that could say that they had a better board than that. We couldn't lose.
Taking his place alongside the venture capital luminaries was the young Steve Jobs, who had never even seen the inside of a boardroom.
There was one board meeting that he took his shoes off and put his bare feet up on a table, and I says, you're excused until you can come back here and act like a board member. He put his shoe back on and everything was fine. And he just needed some training and some direction and some manners.
So this is quite common also in Thailand. Back up. Back up.
คือยังไม่ค่อยเคลียร์เท่าไหร่สมมติถ้าเป็น angel investor เนี่ยมันจะรวมถึงสมมติถ้าเป็น profit organization หรือว่า non profit หรือว่าจริงๆทั้งสองอันสามารถจะเป็น angel investor ได้
So it's easier to figure out what's a venture capitalist, and then the angels are kind of the rest, because angel investing is usually informal. Okay, so for example, Don Oishi, right, is made a lot of money and he invests. And my understanding, because some of my projects have attracted his wife specifically invests in projects that are helpful for kids and women. Okay, now they probably want a return on investment, but they're giving money to promote things that are important to them. Okay, so angel investors tend to be more informal. Now, they may ask for a shareholding, okay, they may ask for, some percentage of the company, but their approach to you or your approach to them will be more informal, okay? So it's not so while it may be hard to understand what angels are, it's very easy to understand the next one, which is venture capital, which I'll explain in a minute. The simplest way to start is angel investment tends to be more informal. In the US, a lot of angel investors are just like that second venture clip. They're people who are interested, let me borrow your microphone, who are interested in technology or they're interested in an industry and they want to stay involved in that industry by reinvesting. And many times they're not really, really rich. They're not Google rich. They've made some money in a company and they pull it together with others. They like to get together with others and invest and hear entrepreneurs make their pitch.
For the angel investor, the main question is, do they need return?
So everyone wants a return, right? Nobody says, I really like you, take my money and just run away with it. Right? Everybody even the friends, family, and fools have an expectation that they're going to get their money back and get a return. The better way of looking at it is probably how serious they are about it. So the friends, family, fools, although friends can be pretty, family in Thailand can be pretty tough, okay? But friends and family are likely to invest in you because they believe in you as a person. Angels are going to believe in you because they've heard your pitch and they believe in you as an entrepreneur and they believe they can contribute to your success. And, by the way, when that angel invests in you, yeah, they're going to take a shareholding. There will be a contract. It's not just, oh, here's some money. You know, there will be a contractual arrangement. But the next step, let me jump ahead to venture capital. Venture capital falls under something called a professional investor. Okay, so if you had a company, I could come invest in you, and you say, okay, I need 100,000 baht. Okay, here's 100,000 baht. I'd like 20% of the company. There would still be a document. There'd be some sort of document, and you would still give me shareholding in the company. That can happen as an angel. But to be one of these professional investors, I need to be licensed as a professional investor, and these are funds. Okay? Now, what is a fund? So angels form a fund, but it's kind of a pool of money. But these are officially licensed funds. They are usually registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission as a fund. So what is a fund? Somebody tell me what a fund is. Probably all of you invest in a fund, you just don't recognize it. What's an example of a fund?
Fund, right? ETF, LTF,
Right. So one fund that many of us may invest in already is like LTF or RMF, right? Okay. You know, these are ones that are available to anybody, okay? But a bank, it's actually, by the way, it's not a bank. It's a bank that owns an investment company. So it's not SCB, the bank, it's SCB Asset, right? So most banks, if you're being very, very specific, banks cannot own funds. Banks have very strict rules. But most banks have set some money aside to set up an asset company, SCB Asset. Even though it has the name SCB in it, it's not a bank. Oh, legally, that thing is not a bank, okay? Because banks are not allowed to set up funds, okay? So SCB sets up something like a retirement fund, RMF, and they explain what they're going to do. So how does the LTF work?
LTF?
Yeah.
Okay, we just choose the LTF that, it depends. Some LTF invest in real assets, some invest in high growth stocks, some, in the big cap company. So you can choose which fund that fit for your, risk level that you can accept.
Okay. So she made a couple of points which are very important, one of them which is not true, but the rest of it is all important. Normally, a retirement fund does not invest in high risk. Okay. Okay, good. I mean, that's, so one thing, the only reason I'm emphasizing this, I mean, she's correct about everything else. The only reason I'm emphasizing this is every fund, including venture capital funds, have a focus. Every fund has a focus, has an investment strategy, right? Some invest in big companies. Some invest in bonds. Some want a safer return. Some invest in only the stock exchange companies, okay? So the point here is we're going to say the same thing about venture capital, but it's true with all of these funds. Every one of them has an investment strategy. And you can read the document. What's the document called that talks about the fund? Prospectus, right? The prospectus explains the fund, explains the legal setup of the fund, explains the investment strategy of the fund. We're going to invest only in companies in China. We're going to invest only in small companies with high growth. Okay? And then the investor has a chance to go in and make a decision on which one they want to invest in. But it's true, retirement funds and LTF and some of these tend to be much lower risk. And who invests in those kind of funds? Us. Regular old people. Okay? And this is a very important distinction. It is a legal distinction. We are called retail investors. Okay? We are called retail investors. It is assumed, and it's generally true, we do not know what we're doing. Okay? And so there are a whole bunch of laws in place to try to protect us. Now, many times we still don't manage to stay protected, but there's a whole bunch of laws in place to protect legal investors on the stock exchange, which is a whole different issue, but also legal investors in these funds. So they are much lower risk. Now, what is a venture capital fund or private equity, the other funds? These are also funds, just like we've described. A private equity fund is set up to invest in a certain type of investment. Or a venture capital fund is set up to invest in a certain type of investment. But legally, you are only allowed to be a professional investor to invest in those funds. None of us could. Okay, unless we declare ourselves what's called a qualified investor. So for example, I have an investment in a fund in the US, and I have to fill out a whole bunch of paper that says I am a qualified investor. I am willing to lose all my money, basically is what it says. It says it in legal terms, but it basically says, I understand that I can lose all my money here. You don't have to sign that when you get an RMF. When you sign an RMF, you're hoping that money will be there on the day you retire, okay? So this is the first thing to understand. Understand that they are all funds, so they all invest in investments based on based on an investment strategy discussed in the prospectus. All funds are that way. However, when we move to this type of fund, they target only professional investors, and by law, the investor needs to declare themselves a professional investor. A retail investor is not allowed to invest.
The private equity can be a company or individual person can be a private equity.
They're certainly not a retail investor. SCB Asset would be a professional investor. Now, the more important question, the additional question you asked is whether an individual can be that investor. Yes, they can. But when you become that investor, you have to sign a form that says, I am a qualified investor as an individual. So I invest in a private equity fund in the US. And I have to fill out a whole bunch of pieces of paper that say that I'm willing to lose and this kind of thing, that I know what I'm doing, which may or may not be true, but I'm signing a legal document that says I know what I'm doing and I have the resources to lose this money. So you actually have to declare that I can show you the documents if you really, really want to look, because I have copies on my computer of the funds that I'm invested in. You go through a whole bunch of lists. One says, I am an investment bank. I am an individual investor that qualifies as a qualified investor by law. I am an investment fund. I am a pension fund. There's a whole bunch of things that you can be, but you have to be legally designated one of those. That's the difference between an LMF, an LTF, and RMF. LTFs are retail, meaning any individual who has the money can invest. We just sign that we put the money in. But when we move into this category called professional investor, a professional investor, individual or organization, is declared as a professional investor by law. That's the big difference between a venture capital fund and an angel fund. Okay? Both of them may have a contract, both of them may have shareholding, but a venture capital fund, by law, the only investors who can invest in that are people who are legally designated qualified investors. I'm talking mostly in the US, not in Thailand, because as we were talking before the break, unfortunately venture capital does not really exist in Thailand, in my opinion. The main purpose for venture capital in Thailand, like so many other things, is a tax break. Okay? So most of the people who invest in this kind of stuff are looking for a tax break. So the laws around venture capital in Thailand are really designed to give you tax breaks if you're willing to invest. Okay? But in the US, you saw how venture capital grew in the US. It started with people who saw opportunities and grew an industry out of it. The laws are put in place to protect. So you have to invest in Kleiner Perkins today, they would send you a big sheet of document. First of all, they'd say you have to have at least $1 million. There'd be a minimum threshold. And it may be $1 million or more. Okay? So it might be $1 million. In fact, Kleiner Perkins is probably millions is too small. It might be $10 million or something. To invest in a Kleiner Perkins fund today, they probably say you have to have a minimum of $10 million investment, and here's a whole bunch of paper that says you are a qualified investor. Okay? In fact, the fund I'm involved in, so I was lucky. I invested in a fund which was started by some very entrepreneurial investors, and for that reason, I got in in their first fund. And first of all, I didn't invest myself. I invested through my company, and my company could afford 10 million baht, so we invested 10 million baht. So they've now just launched a new fund. Their new fund, you have to have 35 million baht minimum to invest. So they contacted me and said, do you want to invest again? I said, I don't have that kind of money. And they said, well, because you were a first investor, you keep investing at a smaller amount. But as they get more successful, they keep raising the minimum threshold. Okay? So that's the big difference. Angels, yeah, you'll still have a contract, you'll still have you'll get shares and all that, but you don't have to declare that you're a qualified investor. Venture capital is a form of professional investment. Okay? And so is private equity. So, first of all, let's make sure we understand that distinction. There's the distinction between these professional investors and angels. Are we clear on that, more or less? Okay? Let's now look at the next distinction within professional investors between private equity and venture capital. Has anybody heard the term private equity before? It's very common in Thailand, actually. What's private equity? What's private equity? Private equity is more common, but by the way, also today, most firms may do everything. They do private equity investments, or they have private equity funds, and those same firms, even Kleiner Perkins, has a private equity fund, okay, in addition to having venture capital funds. So the big question is, what's the difference between private equity and venture capital? Any thoughts? And private equity is very common in Thailand. This is what investment banks do. They invest in funds which are private equity funds. So we can look at the word and get some hints. First of all, we're talking about private equity. There's only two words to choose from there. So the first thing, equity, what does that mean? What does equity mean? We're buying into shares of the company, assets of the company, okay? So private equity implies we're going to be a part owner in this investment. What's the private part mean then? So let me ask you a different question. What's public equity? Yeah, you would think, it's not quite as simple as that. There's a very clear distinction of what a public investment is. It's the Stock Exchange of Thailand. That's why we have this word IPO. What's I? Initial, right? The beginning. O? I'm jumping to O first. Offer, right? Okay, so initial offering, the P is public. So from an investment point of view, the only thing that's called a public investment is a investment on a stock exchange. So the Stock Exchange of Thailand and the Market of Alternative Investments are the only two forms of public investments in Thailand. Okay? So what we mean by private investment then is we're investing directly in the company without going through the exchange. Okay? We are making an investment in the company is selling us something, and we're not going to the exchange. Now, if you look from the other point of view, right now we're looking from the point of view of the investment. But who's the other side of the investment? One side is investing the money. What's the other side doing? If one side is investing money, what's the other side doing? Spending the money, exactly, okay? So one reason, especially outside of Thailand, one reason for an IPO is to get money. It's a source of money. You go public, you issue shares, and people buy your shares, and that is a source of funds. Thailand is also a manipulation trick, okay, but that's a separate issue, all right? But public money is viewed as a source of funds. Okay, so one way you can get money is you can go public. But you don't have to go public, and in fact, going public is very expensive for a lot of reasons. It's expensive time-wise, it's expensive from a paper point of view, because the stock exchange and the SEC are supposed to be monitoring you, and so you have all these reporting requirements, and usually the stock price is at a high price, right? People expect to get a high price for it. So the cost of the equity is very high. So public money is one of the highest costs of capital. Now, of course, you're hoping it's going to go up further from there, so it might be a good investment decision, but public money is usually pretty expensive. Private equity is when somebody, usually an investment bank, says, here, I'll give you some money, you give me some part of your shares, and then you use that money for your investment. Okay? Now we're talking about private equity, not venture capital. So what kind of investment would a private equity or an investment bank be giving you money for? Your company, what would you be using the money for, do you think? What would be some things you need money for?
Expanding.
Great, what's an example of expanding the business? Okay, hold there, don't go too far down diversifying yet, because now we're talking about more risk. If it's diversifying products, that might be something, that's new, that's scaring me if I'm a private equity. But you're right about expanding the business. I have a factory, I'm selling all over the world. The investor can see that I'm successful, they can see I have customers, they can see I have distributors, they can see I have a quality product, they can see I have a factory which is running at 110% capacity. And they will give me 20 million baht to build a new factory. And if I build a new factory, I can increase my sales even further, get more sales, get more profits, and provide a return on investment. Is this a risky investment for the investment banker or for the private equity fund to invest in a second factory to me? Is this a risky investment?
Not much.
Not much?
Not much.
How much?
It's acceptable.
It's acceptable. Can you give me some money to expand my company? I'll be happy to talk to you about it. Come sit with me, I'll talk to you about it. So, I mean, I'm asking the question in a tricky way, but in reality, it depends. Everything is compared to something else. But investing in a new factory to make an existing product is obviously less risky than a completely new technology, like we saw in our clips. So private equity is generally viewed as less risky. It's still risky. Okay, first of all, the economy can go down. You know, if there's a problem in the economy, I just given my money, or you've just given your money to me to build this new factory, and then suddenly the economy crashes, and I can't sell anything, so I can't pay back the investment. So there are risks, but it seems less risky because we can already see the product, we can see the customers, we can see what's going on. So relatively speaking, it's less risky. Okay, so everything is always relative, right? Venture capital then, so if these guys are for investing, see there's already a track record, and there's usually clear market conditions that everybody can see. I don't have to trust the entrepreneur to be talking about this newfangled biotechnology or nanotechnology. You're the nanotechnology expert, right? Or all this stuff that I don't understand like I do if I'm a venture capitalist. Instead, I've probably got business experts working for me who are in the auto industry or the food industry or in existing industries, so we have less risk in private equity.
Is M&A is one part of that strategy?
Certainly. Mergers and acquisitions is another topic that follows on this private equity. In fact, the fund, I was telling you a few minutes ago that I've invested in a fund. Technically, it's a private equity fund. What they are doing, what they have found is in the United States, this is a weird story, but they've convinced me enough to reinvest in them. They have found that if you own a dentist, let's say you're a dentist, okay, you're a dentist and you have your own dentist office. Maybe there's even two of you, two dentists together, something like that, but a small dentist. Someday you will want to sell that business maybe. You're ready to move on, you've got a new young dentist working for you. These guys who have started this fund, have found by doing all kinds of analysis that when dentists sell that kind of a dentist, meaning a single location, they get 4 times their profit. So if this dentist, one dentist or 2 dentists or 3 dentists working together, let's say every year they make $100,000 in profit. Okay? And they're doing this for year after year after year after year, and they're looking to retire, so they want to sell that, and it'll be taken over by some new young dentist who will take over all their customers and stuff. Historically, they have found that they can get 4 times the profit. So if they're making $100,000 a year, then roughly they will make, when they sell the company, $400,000. The new dentist will come in, start doing it again, and make up the $400,000 in a few years' time and continue on. So a small dentist, and by the way, these guys also do it for veterinary, Mossad, right? Exactly, that kind of thing, ISO word. All right, say it, Satawapahat, right? Is that close, okay? That was their second thing. I forgot, the third one is skin doctor, like Dr. Somchai, right? Okay. So individual clinics get 4 times profit. But, this is what they found out, but if it becomes a chain, if it has 10 locations or 20 locations in a region, suddenly when that chain sells, it sells at 10 times the profit. Now, these guys don't know why that is, and they don't care why it is. But what their prospectus says in the fund is, you give us money, all of you give us money, you invest in our fund, and what we're going to do is go out and buy a whole bunch of small dentists and put them all together into a big chain and resell it. And what are we going to get? We're going to go from a 4 times multiple, that's the 4 times profit. Just by putting this together, we moved to 10 times profit. Now a bigger company will buy us for 10 times profit. Same with the Satawapha. Okay? I have a single clinic, I'm just a veterinary doctor on my own, but if I build it, but if this investor comes in, this fund comes in and combines me with 20 other veterinarians, suddenly when they sell that whole thing, it's worth 10 times profit instead of 4 times profit. This is their whole investment strategy, to move from 4 times to 10 times. So they invest to put things together, and then they resell to get this difference in multiple. That's the argument they're making to us. All right, this is private equity. We all can see the veterinarian, we all can see the dentist, we all understand the industry, and we can be convinced of the selling. All right, venture capital now. That's what all this in here needs. Venture capital. What's the problem with investing as a venture capitalist? And we saw all those examples in the clips. What's the problem?
Early stage ventures or company.
With an early stage innovation, right? If it's completely new, there's no way we can visualize. So every clip we looked at, they said the same thing. You know, Genentech, it's this basic science. Nobody really knows if it works. Apple, the only people who know about home computers are these computer nerds that hang out at these computer hobbyist things. Or Tandem Computer. There's not going to be another computer company. IBM already owns the industry, right? That's the difference. All right, so the professional investors, but in private equity, they tend to be focused around industries. They have analysis. They have analysts working for them. It's clearer. It's not 100% risk-free, but it's clearer. We can see a market opportunity. We can see a supply opportunity. We can build the investment around it. But venture capital, strictly speaking, venture capital, we don't know at all whether there's really an opportunity. We have to go by some sort of a feel. And just like we saw in all of these clips, in every one of those examples, even when there was one guy wanted it, all those other experienced venture capitalists still didn't see the opportunity, even though they were used to technology and they loved the risk, anything we want to say, and they were rich, all of those things. Despite all of that, they couldn't bring themselves to make investments in companies like Apple or Tandem or whatever. Why? Because there's no market, at least at that point. There's no clear, it's not clear if the technology even works really at that point. Okay, so this is the big difference. So the difference between angels to private equity is one goes from being informal to professional investors. And the difference between private equity and venture capital is private equity means we're investing in existing companies, existing industries. Venture capital is investing in new technologies, new industries, new companies. Okay? So the only thing the venture capital is gaining is they're banking on a management team and they may be banking on a business model. Okay? And that's the challenge. All right, so in Thailand, I was telling you, one of the challenges with venture capital is we still have a lot of alternatives that make a lot of sense. For example, property. If you were a rich person, we call a high net worth individual, you have a lot of money, okay, or you're from one of these famous families, the equivalent of a Rockefeller or a Whitney, most of what you're going to be interested in investing in is property. Because Thailand's property traditionally keeps on going up. I don't know if it'll go up forever, but as long as Thailand and Bangkok and Thailand and Asia are growing rapidly, it will continue to suck up property prices. So anytime we build something, especially on the river or in a nice location, we know we're going to get a good return on investment. That's more like private equity. We know the market, we know the investment opportunity, we can estimate the risk, we know there's probably customers. We know those customers are all probably in China right now, but they will come here on vacation and buy lots of stuff from us. Right? Bangkok is being fueled by Chinese tourists right now. There's so many Chinese coming to Thailand. right? So as long as Thailand can keep bringing these people, property is always going to be a great investment. So why risk a new technology, right? That's the challenge. So most of what we see are more of a private equity type investment, and we're trying to carve out this venture capital that's investing in this weird stuff. So let me give you an example. And some of you who were at the design thinking workshop, I threw it up for a few seconds. The example of Uber. To me, this sums up the example very, very well. So these are some, I'm going to skip through these slides, but I think you get it by now. So we need to, I'll come back to these slides in a minute. But let me just show you a couple of the slides. This is from Uber's original slide presentation when they went out for investors at the very, very beginning. Okay? Now today, most people, especially most rich people in Thailand, when they talk about becoming a venture capitalist, they're dreaming of finding the next Uber. Okay? You know, everyone who comes to me and says they're a venture capitalist, they're just dreaming of finding the next Uber. But I want people to understand what the first Uber looked like first, before you dream of finding the next Uber. Because most people who dream of finding the next Uber are looking at Uber that's worth $1 billion or $10 billion today. They're not looking at Uber at the beginning when the venture capitalists originally got into it. So here's, again, you can find the entire slide deck up on the internet easily enough. I'm just going to give you a couple of slides. At the design thinking workshop, I showed you one. This will show you a few more. Okay, so Uber was originally called Uber Cab. This was way before Uber Eats and Uber everything else. At the time, they just saw themselves as a cab replacement. That was the original pitch. Okay, and they said, here are the problems. Okay, the problems, and Thailand is similar in a lot of ways, but in the US they have this thing called medallions. Medallion is the license. So to be a taxi driver in Thailand, you have to have a license. Not that different in the US, not that different to Thailand, right? So there's a captured number of taxis. So if you're inside, you have the benefit of being a taxi, and it's blocking people from joining by law. Thailand is similar, although Thailand is more open to increasing the number of taxis. But in the US, in a city like New York City or Boston, the number of medallions has never increased. Okay? The number of medallions is fixed, so that means the price of medallions keeps going up, and they're very, very expensive. Sometimes $500,000 to get this medallion so that you can become a taxi driver. Okay? So this is what Uber is saying. Uber is saying, God, look at this. This is ripe for innovation. Fixed old system. How are we going to do it? Well, we know digital technology. The old taxi system is you wave on the side of the road and the guy maybe picks you up, maybe doesn't pick you up. Same as in New York as in Bangkok, same thing. But with using this new digital technology, we can build a new market. We can link people who want to ride with people who want to drive. Okay, so this is their Uber Cab concept. On-demand car service. At this time, they were actually going to have trained drivers. This is closer to Uber Black. You know, their own cars, their own drivers. Convenience of a cab, but a professional chauffeur was the concept. Okay, use web and device technology to link drivers and riders. Right? Optimize a fleet, provide incentives to drivers, all the kind of things you're used to in Uber already. One-click car service, okay, great. Have to be a member to use the service. This again is generally considered a positive in the digital world. It's not considered a positive in, taxi drivers would never think of setting up a membership, but anybody in digital, that's what we do, right? You have to sign up. Now they make it really easy to sign up, but you still have to sign up to be a member, okay? So they're approaching this. This is all nothing surprising. We all know this because we use this or we use Grab or something like it. But the time that this was produced, which was 12 years ago, this was completely a weird idea. The idea that we're going to approach riding a taxi like using an app. All right, that's why it was so innovative. The other thing, guaranteed pickup. You know, I think most of us know. If you don't know, go down and try to get a taxi today at 5 p.m. Most of us know taxis don't have to pick you up. But Uber was claiming guaranteed pickup, which isn't entirely true either. Okay. So this is their pitch deck. They're making these up. Here's the key differentiator. Members only, one-click hailing, fast response time. Not necessarily today, but this is the pitch before the company exists. Today we're going to go for luxury automobiles at the beginning. Okay, great drivers. You can rate your drivers. All of these things that we know in the digital world, but didn't ever exist in the taxi world. Now here's the important part that most non-venture capitalist investors don't get. This is in their pitch. They say, here is our initial service area. Where is it? Central San Francisco and Manhattan Island, the center of New York City. Right? I mean, most people come to me and say, oh, Jeanette, help me find the next Uber. Well, what is the next Uber? Do you mean Central San Francisco and Manhattan Island? No. The next $1 billion investment. I said, well, by the time it's $1 billion investment, everyone's already invested in it. You need to be willing to be thinking about investing when the entrepreneur is saying, here's what I'm doing. I'm going to launch in downtown San Francisco and I'm going to launch in downtown New York only. See the big difference? This is not like private equity. This isn't like, hey, I already have a factory and I'm already shipping to the US and I'm already shipping to Thailand and here's my back orders. I am 90 days behind. If you help me open another factory, I've got the sales. There's no sales here. And I'm just showing that I'm starting in 2 cities. Okay? And the next slide, this is the slide I showed during design thinking. We've got 3 possible outcomes. Best case scenario, $1 billion. Next phase, realistic scenario, top 5% in 5 cities. What is that? Bangkok, Khon Kaen, Hat Yai, Chiang Mai. I don't know anyone who'd be excited about that. And worst case scenario, we own 10 cars. Okay? Feel the difference? I mean, this is, to be a venture capital investor, you need to be thinking about, does this have potential or not? In fact, there's one slide I didn't put on here. But at the time that this slide deck was made, they're projecting 10 cars. They didn't have a single car at that point. Okay? So again, everybody wants to know the Uber that's going to be worth $1 billion and nobody's ever heard of before and guaranteed a success. And that's the problem. There's no guarantee that Uber is going to be successful at this point. This is a company that didn't own any cars. They were asking money to buy their first car at this point. And they were saying, if we do a good job, we might be able to get up to 10 cars in San Francisco. And if we do really good, we'll be in the 5 biggest cities and maybe $1 billion. That's quite a leap up. Okay? So this for me really provides the illustration of the challenge of creating a venture capital mindset. It's not just having money. But most rich people I know, everywhere in the world, not just Thailand, most rich people I know would look at that and say, what, are you crazy? I can invest in a shopping mall and be guaranteed the $1 billion. I don't need to bank on a taxi service in New York City or in San Francisco. Okay, so this is what I want us to understand. This is our challenge. And if we're involved on the technology side, like we're trying to use venture capital as a way to unlock technology, it's even more of a challenge. At least this one, we can visualize cars and we can probably visualize an app. But remember Genentech, it wasn't even a research that, it only worked in a laboratory. Okay, so this is the challenge behind venture capital. And it's a challenge that private equity doesn't have. It's a challenge that other investment opportunities don't have. But if we can find a small number of investors who are really interested in trying this kind of stuff, no guarantees, but we might be able to unlock a little bit more venture capital in Thailand. Today, the biggest venture capitalist in Thailand is the government. Okay, I don't know this particular firm that Jampan is talking about, but almost every venture firm that's ever contacted me, I say, where's your money coming from? Oh, it's come from the Thai government. So they're more than happy to invest the Thai government's money in a risky way, but I don't know anybody who's investing their own money in a risky way yet. I hope it happens, but I haven't seen it yet. Okay, so this is just a good overview. Let me go back to one other piece of the story, and then we'll get into a little bit of a project. Okay, so that's Uber. That's the real Uber. This is the real slide deck. And my point is, I don't know many people anywhere, including Thailand, who would be that excited about this kind of a story. That's the reason I tell this story. But there's some other things working against us in Thailand. Okay, so a lot of people call themselves VCs now. I'm at the Thai Chamber of Commerce. I have all kinds of rich people coming to me who say they're VCs, or they represent their family's VCs. And I say, just because you're rich doesn't make you a VC. You may be an investor, but you've got to be willing to try some of this weird stuff. All right? So let's look at another challenge that we have. All right? So first of all, not only is investing in new innovations and new technologies very, very difficult. We saw how uncertain Uber is. We saw how uncertain Apple was, Genentech, Tandem. Every story we've seen was a challenge of why would we invest? It makes no sense to invest. But to take things even further, even in the US today, now this is a little bit old, this is 2015, I should probably get an update. But even in the US, with all the excitement of venture capital, with TV shows like Silicon Valley on TV, and with everyone dreaming about this stuff, venture capital, the number of deals has not increased. The only peak was in 2000. What happened in 2000? What happened in 2000? Huh? Ah, that's interesting. That also happened in 2000, but that's not what caused this actually, but this was the internet bubble. So in the late 90s, everyone predicted the internet's going to kill all normal businesses. So this was the rush to invest in the internet version of every normal business. So there was pet companies and every other kind of internet version of a normal business. And of course, the only winner that anybody can point to today is Amazon. Okay? But there was this bubble, huge number of deals, huge loss of money. And there may be, if I went to 2018, there may be a blockchain bubble. Because everyone thinks blockchain is going to change the world as well. But outside of that, you can see the number of deals has hovered. This is all over the US, by the way. This is the whole US has hovered between 2,500 and 5,000, despite all this excitement about venture capital and all these entrepreneurs making lots of money and all this kind of stuff. So you can see it's challenging even in the US. Let's take it even more challenging. These are the areas that people invest in with venture capital. What's number one? By far, number one, by far, is software. Why is software such a great investment? Low cost, right? All you have to do is pay pizza money to young programmers until they either starve or bring you a great product. You don't have to build a product, you don't have to set up a factory. Software is relatively easy as an investment. So look at that. Software is a huge amount. This is the total amount of VC funding in 2015. By far, software kills everything. Second best is biotechnology. Okay, that's okay, we know biotech. Third best, consumer products and services. Fourth, media and entertainment, another form of software. And then IT services, another form of software. So basically, 4 of the top 5 are software-like products. You don't have to create a physical thing. You don't have to have a physical factory. Okay? So we've got this working against us as well, because I believe Thailand cannot be good at software. Don't be noisy, Johnny, if you're a programmer. There's a good reason. This has nothing to do with Thailand itself, but the fact is, there's two problems with software that hurt Thailand. First of all, it's very flexible and easy to change, and it's full of bugs. What does this mean? Well, it means the first advantage that Thailand might have, doing things in the Thai language, is not an advantage, because you can just reprogram everything from English into every other language. We know that, right? All of our apps are automatically in every language. And full of bugs, that means the more people you have using it, the faster you're fixing problems. So even if you could create something in Thailand, the entire market's only 70 million people, or 66 or something like that. And most of those people are still not using computers. Whereas in California, you create something in California, it goes out, you have all these people around the world who are doing the debugging for you. Software companies don't make a perfect product, they make terrible products, okay? And then they wait for us to find the bugs and then they fix them. All right, so unfortunately, this is nothing against Thailand's capabilities, but unfortunately, the people, the places in the world which are already computer centers will continue to lead software. It's really hard to get around that, because you just need lots of users to be able to fix your product. So either that or come up with something really, really clever, but don't rely on the Thai language as an advantage. It's not big enough. Okay, it's got to be something in English. All right? So this is, remember my lesson. Most venture capital software, and two, the problems that most of us work in are not software type problems. They're other types of problems. Even what's the biggest industry in Thailand? Agriculture, right? Even in the US, there's not much venture capital for agriculture. So the biggest area for Thailand to do research, agriculture, doesn't even get venture capital in the US. I have plenty of friends who work at agricultural research universities, and this is what they complain about. They say, venture capital doesn't help us because we don't make, agricultural innovations don't make enough money to excite people. And they're highly risky. And the US is just like Thailand. There's only 3 or 4 big companies that control everything. Okay, so I want us to be aware of these challenges that we're overcoming to even consider venture capital here. With that being said, some of us were talking about impact investing, social entrepreneurship. I think there's a huge opportunity there. If we work on problems that are unique to Thailand or Southeast Asia, there are people with money who will invest to solve problems, not develop the technology. So I urge all of us, anytime we do this, we're always trying to be more problem-based in our opportunities. Okay, so those of us who are in social enterprise, or if you're in social enterprise, just forget the number. In fact, you guys can look it up. But impact investors, I think $270 billion seeking impact investments around the world. Okay, so I urge you, if you're seeking venture capital, try to do something that has a social benefit, high impact, and look for investors who are investing in those kind of projects. I believe you have a much better chance of success. So that's why I do a lot of work in impact and social enterprise, because I believe that's the way to really bring venture capital to Thailand. Okay, so that's our story. In the slides that we've done since we come back from lunch, first of all, we did a summary to kind of wrap up what we did all morning. And then I tried to show you some of the challenges, the real challenges of venture capital that we are always going to have, no matter who we compete with anywhere in the world. And then my last final message for now is try to look for impact opportunities, use innovation, use technology, but look for an impact outcome. And I believe you have a much higher chance of getting venture capital, okay, than we would going head-to-head with a basic technology, or worse, going head-to-head with an agricultural technology which doesn't even attract venture capital even in the US. Okay? So I'm not trying to say anything to depress anyone here. Actually, this is the area I work in. I work in it because I think there's a lot of room for optimism, but I think we should be focusing on targets where we really have a chance to move forward. Thailand is full of problems. The region is full of problems. So if we can encourage entrepreneurs to be working on those problems, I think we can grab large pieces of impact venture capital. Okay? So I think that's the next slide. Silicon Valley, sorry. I mean, everyone compares themselves to Silicon Valley. Okay? So really look for impact opportunities is kind of a message I encourage us to consider. I'll be happy to talk to you more about social enterprise. That's not the goal of this workshop, but I really believe for venture capital and for innovation, that's a big, strong area for Thailand to grow into and take a leadership role in this region. CLMVT, 400 million people with needs for, water, food security, education, lots of opportunities across that area, and investors who are looking to invest in impact ventures, which are slightly different than technology ventures. Okay, so I'll just leave that thought with you. Let's get into some work. You guys have listened to me long enough. Now let's get back to this. That's my impact investor slide. Okay, so I want us to do a little bit of hands-on stuff now, because tomorrow when you get Ajahn Jung back, he's going to be talking about some of the mechanics of investing. All right? So whenever we have an entrepreneur that we're working with, the first thing we need to do is get their idea into some sort of financial form. So many of us have been involved with pitching, and we know the pitch deck. Now I'm going to talk about the financials that go along with that. And I call this back of the envelope. Anybody know what the term back of the envelope means? It's kind of an engineering term, and it's kind of an older term. So if you're an older engineer in the room, you may know what back of the envelope means. Are you an older engineer? You look like an older engineer. What does back of the envelope mean?
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay. Yeah, so now we're figuring out what envelope is. A long, long time ago, people used to send mail in these things called envelopes. Today there's Gmail, so you can't do back of the envelope calculations anymore, because we don't have envelopes. But in the old days, what would happen is you'd get a whole bunch of mail on your desk, and you'd open it up and you'd throw it around, and if you were like me, you never cleaned off your desk, so you just have piles of scratch paper and lots of old envelopes. So when I was an engineer, if I had an idea, I'd just grab one of the old envelopes and just make some calculations on it. We call it the back of the envelope calculation. All right? What this emphasizes is quick, dirty, and informal. We're not trying to get a real fancy financial model. We're trying to see, does this business idea make sense? So we're trying to do a really quick calculation. Does this business opportunity make sense? Now we have a financial expert in here, all right? But in some ways, she probably knows a lot more than we need to do this. In fact, I'm sure she knows a lot more than we need to do this. To do a back of the envelope calculation requires just a couple of basic understanding about accounting. All right, so let's take a look at this. So first of all, for an entrepreneurial opportunity, we want to try to build what's called bottom up. Bottom up, not top down, but bottom up. What does that mean? What does bottom up calculations mean? Starting from the bottom up, what does that mean?
From the cost.
Okay. What's it from? What's bottom up mean?
Start from net income.
Start with net income. Okay? I'd like to start even earlier than that. Expenses, okay, we can put expenses in. Let's look at it a different way around. What would top down mean be, do you think? Say that? Okay, but what's the high position if we're trying to put together a plan? I agree with that statement. What's the high position when we're looking at a plan? Okay, total something, total sales or total market. All right, so we saw some of this yesterday, right? We saw some estimates what the total market size is, $1 gazillion. Okay, so a top-down approach would start by doing some research, and we would look, where do we do research? Google, right? Don't forget Google. Right? So we would do some research on Google, and we would find out in this area that we want to work, there is a gazillion people with the problem, or a gazillion machines that are broken, or a gazillion cars, or whatever. And then we say, all we need is 1% of that. So 1% of a gazillion, I don't know what a gazillion is, 10 times x to something. Okay, and then you move it back 2 decimal points to get 1% of a gazillion. And you say, see, we have a big market share. And in the first year, we're only going to get 1% of 1%. And the second year, it's going to be 2% of 1%. And you grow it from there, from this big top number. And what I'm suggesting is that's the wrong way to do it. Now, not everyone agrees with me, but there's a chunk of us who agree with me, including the guy who teaches entrepreneurial finance at MIT, who you met last year, which I'm about to see. Bottom up is we start with one customer. And we say, okay, how long will it take to get 2 customers, and 5 customers, and 10 customers, and we grow up from there. And the reason I like this approach is because I can see it. I can't see a gazillion. I can't see 1% of a gazillion. But I can sit down with you, and we can figure out how to go out and get that first customer. And once we've gotten that first customer, we can figure out how to get that second customer and third. And by the way, it all depends on industry, right? If you are selling a very expensive, specialized machine, you may only sell 5 or 6 a year. Like, there are companies that make supercomputers, right? Supercomputer company sells 5 a year. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they're done for the year. Okay. On the other hand, if it's a tool, we might need to get to hundreds or thousands. But we're still starting with an entrepreneurial opportunity, so we always have to start at 0. So that's what I mean by bottom up. Who are our first customers going to be? How many are there going to be? Why are they going to buy from us? What do we need to do to find them, to talk with them, to explain to them why they should buy from us, to let them test our product? What are all the things we need to do before they start to buy from us? And then once they start to buy from us, how quickly will the second one buy from us? Remember Tom Perkins? It took us forever to sell the first tandem computer. Who was the first customer for tandem computer? Anybody remember? Citibank. Took forever for that first customer. And now we got Citibank, and then suddenly more and more banks. It grew from the bottom up. All right, so I want you to practice this in this project I'm going to give you. Don't start from like an overall market number and make percentages downward. Instead, imagine starting from the bottom up from one customer and growing. Now that doesn't mean you can still grow fast. You can say we're going to go to 100 and 1,000 or whatever, but if you say we're going to grow from 100 customers to 1,000 customers, you need to explain why you can grow from 100 to 1,000. So give me an example of how we might grow from 100 customers to 1,000 customers. What might we do to grow from 100 customers to 1,000 customers? What might we do to grow from 100 customers to 1,000 customers? Okay, we might open a website. Does it cost money to have a website? Okay? My point is, when you put in your plan, we're going to grow from 100 to 1,000, you also immediately put in the cost. Okay? So this is that bottom-up approach. Every time you're thinking about, how do we find that first customer? Oh, we need to fly out to the factory. That's a cost that goes into your expenses. We want to reach more people. We're going to open a website. Okay, maybe not real expensive, but we need to have somebody. What's the cost? We're going to do advertising. What's the cost? We're going to go to a trade show. What's the cost? All right? So when we're building this bottom-up projections, not only are we thinking about the sales, we're also thinking about all the costs necessary, and then all of that goes into our projections. All right? So usually bottom up. As I said here, sometimes it's market size times market share. I don't believe in that. Instead, start with some units that we can visualize, and then, people, machines, or whatever, multiply by that by a growth factor that we can believe. Add the cost as we go along, multiply by what you think the selling price can be, but be very clear on the selling price and why you think that people are willing to pay that price, and build up a financial report. What is the information in a financial report, financial expert? She's going to be so much of an expert, she's not going to be able to think in the small basic,
Information in
just a
financial report,
basic,
right?
in a basic report.
Revenue,
Okay,
expense,
first thing, usually revenue is the top line. Okay?
expense,
Okay? What are called cost of goods sold, but the cost to get that revenue. Then what? Then gross profits. So this is the standard format.
sales expense and operating expense.
Okay? So the top line always is revenue. Okay? What's revenue measured in? In money, baud or something else. Remember, I want something else above that. I want physical units, people, machines, or something I can visualize, multiplied by a selling price, and that gets to our top line of revenue. The next thing on that is usually, the accountants call it cost of goods sold. I use a slightly different term, meaning variable cost. We'll come back to that in a minute. Revenue minus variable cost is what? Some of you just said it. Gross profit. Right? Gross profit. The next line, accountants call it selling and administrative costs. I call it fixed costs. And then you get to net profit. All right? That's the basic sales report. Income statement. We can find out how much money we're making. Okay? Let's talk about fixed and variable expenses for a second. What's a fixed cost? Fixed cost.
The cost that we need to pay, even we cannot sell anything, even we don't produce anything.
Okay, so fixed costs are costs we're gonna pay no matter what we sell. All right. Look at this collection of microphones back here. Okay, give me an example. Give me another example. Give me another example. I put them on the slide, okay? So rent. Rent is often a very fixed cost, right? Every month I'm going to pay rent no matter whether I sell a lot or a little. Every month I'm going to pay salaries whether I sell a lot or a little. Every month I'm probably going to pay an average electricity bill, okay? But do we agree there's no accountants in here? Right, no accountants, you're the closest. No accountants in here. So accountants look at this slightly differently than I do for a couple of reasons. For example, salaries. Accountants look at the salary of somebody working in a factory and call that a direct cost. Okay? And that's for historical reasons. They used to think in the past, you know, they would say on average one person can make 1,000 things a month, and on average one of our workers costs 30,000 baht. So the cost of that is 30,000 baht divided by 1,000 things. It's about 30 baht per thing. And they would call it a variable cost. But the problem is, those guys still work for you every month, no matter how much you make. Okay, so accountants have always done it that way because it's kind of easier from an accounting point of view, but it's bad for us from an entrepreneurial management point of view. So if you are going to pay that salary no matter what, I call it fixed. I put it down below. On the other hand, what did we learn from Tom Perkins in Genentech? What did Tom Perkins do in Genentech? Subcontract. Why did he subcontract? Reducing the fixed costs. So this is, if you can subcontract, you can move. If you can really subcontract, I'm going to pay you to make 1,000 of these. If you make 1,000, I pay you some amount. If you make 2,000, I make you twice as much. Then it becomes a true variable cost. Okay? So if you talk to an accountant who's used to GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles, they will say factory salaries are usually not called fixed costs, they're called direct costs or variable costs. But we're not interested in that. We're interested in allocating our variable costs as sales or production go up and down, and the fixed costs are the stuff that we are stuck with no matter what. And the reason I do that is because at the beginning, we want to minimize fixed costs. Just like Tom Perkins, we want to minimize fixed costs as early as possible. Later on, once we start selling more, then we want to minimize variable costs. All right? Because we get that, it's called leverage. Now you make a lot for the same fixed cost. But at the beginning, we don't want to waste cash if we're not selling. All right? So just keep this in mind. Fixed costs tend to be, if you sign a lease, electricity of your office doesn't go up and down very much. You're going to have to pay electricity every month. If you're hiring yourself as a manager, you're going to have to pay fixed costs every month. Okay? But variable costs are the per unit cost to deliver your product. To make it, or to deliver it, or to sell it. All right? And the goal always is try to move things towards variable costs as much as possible, at least early in the venture. Over time, you can move them to fixed later to increase your profit, but at the beginning, you want to decrease your risk. Okay? So any kind of pay per service, pay per usage, is a great way to have variable costs. It's expensive. Long term, it's expensive. But it's great early on when you're trying to minimize cash. You don't want to be investing cash in stuff when you're not sure if you're going to be successful. Okay? So with those in mind, here's your project. Let me check the time first. Okay. We have about an hour and 15 minutes, and in that time, I want you to do the financials. I told you they're quick and dirty. You have to do the following. You have to get the financials done for my project. You have to go to the bathroom if necessary, and have a coffee break all by 4 o'clock. All right, because I want to be done by 4 o'clock. That's my promise to you. But here's the project. So you have this idea. This is one of my favorite ideas. I share this with every group. Nobody has stolen from me yet, which has me worried. But imagine you have this brilliant idea that you're going to set up a service so that tourists can drive tuk-tuk from Bangkok to Kunming. I told you it's a great idea. Okay? Now, okay, they're going to drive up there. Here's what there's some other constraints I put in. All right? You assume they're staying in hotels along the way. You assume they're going to drive tuk-tuk. You assume it's self-drive. That means one person driving, one person sitting with the luggage. Okay? Follow these assumptions. eating in hotels, or eating in restaurants, staying in hotels, those are the assumptions. You need to figure out, quick and dirty, how much profit you think you can make, just to estimate how much profit that you think you can make, and how much investment you think you're going to need to get this thing going. You can do it electronically if you want to on a device. This is by table, by the way. You can do it electronically, but you can also do it on paper. This doesn't have to, it can be done either way. But as you try to do this, you're going to start making a whole bunch of assumptions. How long is the trip? How far is the trip? How do we pay for things like tuk-tuks? How do we pay for things like hotels? What cost? What price should we charge? All of those things. You're going to force yourself to make a whole bunch of assumptions and come up with a growth. How many customers are you going to have on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? And show me the growth over 1 year. At the end of 1 year, I want to know what the profit is for every group. So I'm going to ask for 2 numbers. At about 10 minutes to 4, I'm going to say, hey, you guys, what's your profit and how much investment do you need? Profit, not sales. I'm going to be interested in profit. Okay, I'll look at sales later. All right, so at 10 minutes to 4, I'm going to go around and say, how much profit and what investment do you need? Clear? All right, let's get started. I'll be here to help you. Like I said, break whenever you want, bathroom whenever you want. But at 3:50, I need to know your profit at the end of 1 year and how much investment you're going to need. Go. I'm here to ask questions.